This video covers all the latest chapters starting from chapter 90 onward. If you haven't watched the earlier chapters yet, be sure to check the link in the description or tap the I button above to catch up. Let's start today's recap. The scene shifted to Sichuan province, at the Tang clan. The Qing Qing sect's elder, known as the Tempest Swordsman, arrived alongside Nun Myoljiol, the Ma sect's first disciple, and their respective disciples. As they entered, they saw members of the Shaolin Temple and the Heavenly Merchant Guild already present. The Qing Qing sect elder shouted angrily, declaring that by law, all matters occurring in Sichuan must be resolved within Sichuan itself. He questioned what business the Shaolin Temple and the Heavenly Merchant Guild from Hunan province had there, accusing them of ignoring Sichuan's laws. Ryuseowa, the daughter of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's leader and the overall representative of the guild's body treatment clinic, stepped forward. Clasping her hands respectfully, she apologized and explained that the Heavenly Merchant Guild had come only to provide medical treatment, having heard that many people in the region were suffering from bone and joint ailments. The Qing Qing sect elder shouted again, accusing her of openly declaring an intention to interfere in Sichuan's affairs. At that moment, Haiyan, the leader of the Shaolin External Hall who had come to capture Mujin and his companions, stepped forward. He calmly replied that Shaolin had no intention of interfering in Sichuan's affairs, but neither could they stand by and allow an unnecessary fight to break out. Hearing this, the Qing Qing sect elder, the Ma sect's first disciple, and their followers grew tense. They turned to leave, and the Qing Qing sect elder shouted that for the sake of Shaolin's reputation, they would overlook the matter this time, but warned that it would not be so simple next time. Haiyan responded evenly, saying that if fate allowed, they would meet again. Silently observing everything, Patriarch Tang Peijin thought to himself that Shaolin's reputation was truly well-earned. With aura alone, they had driven back both the Qing Qing sect and the Ma sect. After letting out a sigh, Haiyan turned to Patriarch Tang and said that now the urgent matter was settled, he wished to see Mujin and the remaining children. Tang Peijin became visibly nervous at those words. Meanwhile, a person approached Ryuseowa with a letter and whispered that warrior Kang Hyuk had asked him to deliver it to her. Kang Hyuk was a false name Mujin was using. She accepted the letter. At the same time, Tang Peijin informed Haiyan that Mujin and his companions were no longer there and had already fled. Ryuseowa opened the letter and began to read. Inside, it said that he hoped she had been well. He wrote that he had been traveling with his companions, settling many matters along the way, and thus had not found time to visit. However, he believed the traces of his journey would prove helpful to both Shaolin and the Heavenly Merchant Guild. When the day came that they met again, he promised to send word in advance, and until then, he wished for her safety. The letter was signed by Mujin. The scene then shifted to a distant forest. Mujin stopped the carriage so they could rest, and the group began eating calorie bars made by Mujin with Tangak's help. Mujin remarked that since they had come this far, their senior brothers would not be able to pursue them immediately. The horses were tired as well, so resting for a while was necessary. Mugung asked where exactly they were. Mu Kyung commented that since Mujin had been leading the horses, he should know. Meanwhile, Muyul and Chung Su were unloading items from the carriage. Mujin unfolded the map and admitted that he had not had a chance to look at it earlier because everyone had urged him to hurry. After examining it, he pointed to Guangxi province and told them that was where they were. The others reacted in shock, saying they had never even heard of such a place. Mujin explained that of course they had not, since Guangxi was an unorthodox sect region. Hearing this, they panicked, shouting that they had entered unorthodox territory. Mujin reminded them that they were the ones who had told him to hurry anywhere at all. They replied that they had been afraid the elders would chase them down, and that if they were caught, Shaolin would show no mercy. Mujin silently apologized in his heart. The truth was that he had brought them to Guangxi on purpose. There was someone there they needed to recruit as an ally, and they also had to crush the members of the New Heavens faction along the way. It could not be helped. Aloud, Mujin reassured them that even if it was unorthodox territory, nothing too terrible would happen in broad daylight. Eventually, they calmed themselves, reasoning that Guangxi was still a place where people lived, and running into green forest bandits did not happen that often. Almost immediately after, they heard footsteps approaching. Turning toward the sound, they saw a group of 5 bandits, led by a bald man. One of the bandits sneered, asking why monks who should be in a temple were wandering through their territory. The leader laughed and suggested that perhaps Buddha had sent them as a gift. Mujin and his companions noted internally how quickly the bandits had appeared after being mentioned. The bandit leader announced himself as Crazed Bear Meng Rang, the nightmare and terror of Guangxi province. He mocked them and leapt into the air, swinging his club down toward them. A short time later, Meng Rang was sitting on the ground with a battered face, trembling as he begged forgiveness. He admitted his foolishness and acknowledged their strength. Mujin replied flatly that Meng Rang was simply weak. Mu Kyung commented that this must be the level of Green Forest bandits who had never properly learned martial arts. Magong asked what they should do with them. Meng Rang weakly muttered that Buddha taught mercy to all living beings, only to be immediately silenced by Magong. Mujin, however, was already thinking ahead. To keep the New Heavens faction in check within Guangxi, their small group alone would not be enough. He approached Meng Rang and asked where the largest Green Forest stronghold in the region was. Some time later, the scene shifted to the largest Green Forest stronghold in Guangxi, Great Tiger Stronghold. A group dressed as bandits arrived at its gates. The guards shouted at them to identify themselves and warned them to leave if they valued their lives. It was revealed that the newcomers were Mujin and his companions. Standing at the front, Magong shouted that they were the Black Bear sect and had come to take over Great Tiger Stronghold that very day. Earlier, Mujin had proposed disguising themselves as bandits. Mu Kyung had been shocked, asking if they were really pretending to be Green Forest bandits. Mujin had explained that it was like hiding a leaf within the forest. By pretending to be a Green Forest group, they could avoid pointless conflict, overthrow other bandit groups, and protect the people of Guangxi. Mu Kyung had reluctantly accepted the logic. Magong, however, had initially refused, declaring that as a proud member of the Great Shaolin Temple, he would not pretend to be Green Forest. Mujin had simply told him that if he did it, he could be the leader. At that, Magong had immediately agreed, blushing as he accepted the role. Now, at Great Tiger Stronghold, Magong shouted that he was the Black Bear sect's leader, the Bear Fist Destroyer, and demanded that the leader of Great Tiger Stronghold come out and face him. A guard scoffed at the insolence, but before he could act, a huge man emerged from within the stronghold. Placing a hand on the guard's head, the man told him to step aside. The guard immediately obeyed. The towering leader approached Magong, his physique far larger and more imposing. Magong could not help but think about how enormous the man was. The leader sneered, saying he had never heard of any Black Bear sect. He mocked the idea of leaders fighting over ownership like orthodox sects, declaring that Green Forest only took what it wanted, and now, it would take their lives. With that, the bandits surrounded Mujin's group. Sometime later, the leader was sitting on the ground, his face swollen and defeated. He begged forgiveness, admitting that he had failed to recognize their greatness. Mujin repeated calmly that the man was simply weak. Then he turned to Magong and told him that now they were properly dressed and prepared, it was time for the chief to say a few words. Magong cleared his throat and declared that starting that day, Great Tiger Stronghold would fall under the banner of the Black Bear sect. He announced himself as their new leader, the Bear Fist Destroyer. Watching him, Mujin thought that Magong seemed to be genuinely enjoying himself. With that, he knew the mission to crush the New Heavens faction had truly begun. Some time later, Mujin explained the truth to his companions. New Heavens was the root of nearly every tragedy within the Geijiang universe. Contrary to what one might expect, their first targets had not been the great Murim clans or the major sects, but the merchant guilds of Murim. Their operations had proceeded in absolute secrecy, and before anyone realized what was happening, Murim's most prominent merchant guilds had fallen completely into New Heaven's grasp. Using those guilds, New Heavens moved enormous sums of money and vast quantities of military supplies. To transport these resources covertly, they had established a disguised organization, the North Wind Escort Establishment. While eating a bar beside him, Magong remarked that this meant the North Wind Escort Establishment was the group they were waiting for. Mujin confirmed it. He reminded Magong of the group they had encountered back at the Tai sect, the ones who possessed the Divine Thief Tomb's map. During his time at the Tang clan, Mujin had heard many things, one of which was that the North Wind Escort Establishment was closely tied to New Heavens. After chewing for a moment, Magong asked when they would arrive. Mujin replied that he had no way of knowing. It was boring to wait, but they were allowing all other travelers to pass normally. Seeing the relief on people's faces made it worthwhile. Inwardly, Magong noted that the Green Forest bandits had not looked pleased at all. Just then, the former leader of Great Tiger Stronghold arrived and reported that a signal had come from the scouts at the forest trail's entrance. The North Wind Escort Establishment mentioned by Mujin was approaching. Hearing this, Mujin smiled, turned to Magong, and said that they were here. Magong smiled back. Before long, The North Wind Escort Establishment's caravan arrived at the Great Tiger Stronghold's toll point. Mujin, Mugum, and the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold moved to stop the carriages. An elderly man from the escort stepped forward, clasped his hands respectfully, and greeted them. He introduced himself as Jang Won-sam, the chief escort leader of the North Wind Escort Establishment, and said he looked forward to working with them. Mujin and the others remained silent, staring coldly at Jang Won-sam. Jang Won-sam produced a pouch filled with coins and explained that it was the toll payment, adding that they had included a bit more than the standard rate. Mujin replied that it was not enough. The toll fee had increased, and they would need to pay 10 times that amount. Jang Won-sam was taken aback and protested that such a sum was impossible for a small escort establishment like theirs. Mujin stepped closer and calmly said that if that was the case, there was no helping it. He leaned in and whispered that Jang Won-sam should offer a tribute instead of a toll, remarking that one of the wagons reeked of something very valuable. Jang Won-sam laughed and remarked that they were no ordinary green forest rabble. Suddenly, he flung the coin pouch toward Mujin to obstruct his vision and followed up with a surprise sword attack. Mujin barely avoided it by bending backward. Shocked, Jang Won-sam asked how Mujin had dodged the strike. Mugum called out anxiously, asking whether Mujin was all right. Before Mugum could do anything else, he heard shouting behind him. Turning around, he saw the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold being attacked by members of the North Wind Escort Establishment. The bandits cried out in confusion, asking why the escorts were attacking them out of nowhere, and how they could be so impossibly strong. Gritting his teeth, Mugum muttered that he had not even seen them move. When had they gotten behind them? Meanwhile, facing Jang Won-sam, Mujin glanced back at the escort fighters. He realized they had used phantom steps and dark shadow arts. These men had already become new heavens hunting dogs. Mugum rushed toward his subordinates, apologizing to Mujin and saying he would leave Jang Won-sam to him. Shouting at the escorts, Mugum demanded to know what they were doing to his brothers. He immediately ordered the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold to gather around him. They obeyed at once. When one escort tried to strike a bandit, Mugum intercepted the blow, kicking the attacker away. He declared loudly that anyone who touched his subordinates would answer to him, Bare Fist Destroyer, chief of Great Tiger Stronghold. Watching this, Mujin thought that Mugum was far too immersed in his role. Jang Won-sam then shouted at Mujin, demanding to know who they really were. Judging by their aura and stances, he accused them of being Shaolin monks, though their grown hair made it difficult to tell. Mujin calmly replied that his identity hardly mattered at the moment. Instead, he asked what about Jang Won-sam himself, a new heavens bastard. Jang Won-sam fell silent, confused, and asked what Mujin meant. Smiling, Mujin asked if he wanted him to repeat it. Angered by the insult, Jang Won-sam charged forward, shouting that he would tear Mujin limb from limb until he confessed how he knew that name. He swung his ore-infused sword repeatedly, but Mujin avoided every strike with precise footwork. Leaping into the air, Jang Won-sam unleashed a powerful vertical strike using his sword energy, Azure Heavens. Mujin smiled, hardened his skin with the Iron Guard technique, and blocked the attack head-on. Jang Won-sam's sword shattered on impact. Stunned, Jang Won-sam demanded to know how Mujin's body could be so durable. Mujin did not answer. He gathered aura into his right fist and struck Jang Won-sam directly in the face. Blood sprayed as Jang Won-sam collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Mujin let out a sigh, remarking that it was fortunate Jang Won-sam had not been that difficult to deal with. Mugum approached and asked anxiously if Mujin, no, the vice chief, was all right, and whether the man was dead. Mujin replied that he had only knocked him unconscious. Smiling, he ordered everyone to see what the escorts had been hiding, to load the wounded into the wagon, and to return to Great Tiger Stronghold. As they moved out, Mugum reflected that the leader of the North Wind Escort Establishment had been strong, and even the escorts themselves were far from ordinary. He wondered just how far Mujin's monstrous abilities had grown. Mujin gave the order to head back. That night, at Great Tiger Stronghold, now renamed the Black Bear Sect, Mujin's group gathered after completing their assigned tasks. Mu Kyung reported that the tribute had consisted only of clothes, which they had burned as Mujin instructed. However, something unexpected had been hidden inside. Mugum remarked that hiding it within clothes made sense, as it was the safest place. Chung Su added that he could feel an ominous energy leaking from the item. Mujin realized that his suspicions had been correct. They had been hiding something, but he had never expected to actually see it, dragon-scale armor. He could not confirm whether it truly came from a dragon, but it was the symbolic possession of the Wolf King, one of New Heaven's 7 captains, and the strongest divine-grade armor in existence. He had thought the North Wind escort establishment was transporting something from the underworld faction, never something like this. If used properly, it could deal a massive blow to New Heavens. Breaking the silence, Mugung asked what they should do next. Were they going to stay and fight the North Wind escort establishment? Mujin replied that had been the original plan. However, with this unexpected discovery, they needed to change course. They would leave the mountain immediately and head for the Minor Azure sect. Late at night, at the Guangxi Black Bear sect, Chung Su stood watch atop a nearby hill, perfectly still as his eyes scanned the surroundings. Ever since that day, the headaches had never truly stopped. He couldn't tell whether it was simple exhaustion from the long journey, or the lingering pain of having lost someone precious. Either way, the ache left his heart heavy and his mood steeped in quiet sorrow. Suddenly his senses flared. Hostile auras, more than one, were approaching from a distance, not far at all. His expression tightened. The feeling was familiar. He knew immediately that he had to warn the others. Meanwhile, a group rushed through the darkness toward the Black Bear sect's territory. They were members of the North Wind escort establishment, led by its owner, Dan Chianak. Anxiety churned in his chest as he moved. Something was terribly wrong. No signal had arrived confirming the escort goods had reached their destination. Of all times for things to go wrong, it had to be now, while the dragon scale armor was being transported. No matter the cost, he had to recover it. Then, Dan Chianak noticed 2 figures standing calmly in the middle of the path ahead. He raised a hand, halting his men. "Who are you two?" As they stepped into the light, their identities became clear: Mujin and Mugung. Mujin casually tapped Mugung on the shoulder. "See? I told you these bastards would show up." Earlier that day, Mujin had warned him that the North Wind escorts would come back. Mugung had been skeptical. "You really think they'd dare attack again, in broad daylight?" "Of course," Mujin had replied. "For something this important, someone would be keeping watch. They must have realized the dragon scale armor went missing, even if they don't know who took it. If they fail to retrieve it, their heads will roll." Mugung had frowned. "Is it really that important?" Mujin had nodded grimly. "Its owner isn't some ordinary madman. They'll send someone at least on the level of a commanding head escort." After a moment of thought, Mugung had asked quietly, "If that happens, can I fight their leader?" Mujin had looked surprised. "I don't mind, but why?" "I felt something," Mugung had said, recalling Mujin's earlier battle with Zhang Wansam. Now, in the present, Dan Chianak roared and charged forward. "You fucking idiots! How dare you touch his property? You have no idea who you're dealing with. You're running straight toward your own deaths." Mugung stepped forward to meet him. Dan Chianak's sword slashed through the air with terrifying speed. Mugung ducked beneath the strike, his heart pounding. Even without revealing his true identity, he could tell, this man was faster than expected. "I can't use the Rulai Divine Palm outright," Mugung thought. "But I can borrow its essence, channel that explosive force into my fist. All I need is one opening." Dan Chianak struck again, the blade aimed straight for Mugung's neck. "Now!" Mugung slipped beneath the swing and surged forward, closing the distance in an instant. His fist, packed with compressed force, slammed into Dan Chianak's abdomen. The impact echoed like thunder. Dan Chianak coughed violently, blood spraying from his mouth as he collapsed to his knees, then fell face first into the dirt, unconscious. Mugung exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. A slow clap sounded behind him. He turned to see Mujin, who had already defeated every escort Dan Chianak had brought along. "That was impressive," Mujin said with a grin. "You applied the Rulai Divine Palm into a fist technique, exploding fist strike, right?" Mugung chuckled proudly. "Of course. I am the Bear Fist Destroyer." Mujin laughed. "How long are you planning to keep that title?" As he laughed, Mujin studied him with quiet pride. To transform the Rulai Divine Palm into a fist technique on the spot, Mugung's adaptability was remarkable. In a single exchange, he had created a new martial skill. He truly had grown. At that moment, a voice called out from the darkness. "Are you two all right?" They turned to see Chung Su approaching, concern etched across his face. "Taoist Chung Su?" Mujin asked. "What brings you here so late?" "That's my question," Chung Su replied. "I sensed hostile auras and rushed over. When I felt yours nearby, I feared something had happened." Mujin gestured toward Dan Chianak's unconscious body. Well, this is awkward. These are the people we were waiting for. Chung Su's eyes widened. That attire, North Wind Escort Establishment? That's right, Mujin said calmly. Our business here is finished. Once the sun rises, we'll abandon the carriage and leave. Mugung hesitated. What about the treasure inside? We won't use it, Mujin replied. It'll only slow us down. From here on, speed matters more. He paused, then added softly, we come into this world empty-handed, and we leave empty-handed. In his heart, Mujin knew the truth. The treasure would scatter with the former Great Tiger Stronghold bandits, traded across cities and regions. That chaos would buy them time stolen from New Heaven's pursuit. Elsewhere, at Yahello Wolf Fang's stronghold, a trembling subordinate knelt before the Wolf King, one of New Heaven's 7 captains, a future legend of the Geijiang universe. The dragon scale armor has been stolen. The man reported, cold sweat dripping down his face. We're searching all of Guangxi province. The Wolf King chuckled softly. How troublesome. He murmured. A chess piece meant for my board has slipped away. The Cloud Fragrance Hall Master dies, and now the armor he gifted us is gone. Why am I surrounded only by incompetence? We'll retrieve it, the man vowed. Without fail. The Wolf King moved. In a single motion, his blade flashed, and the man's head rolled to the ground. He has spoken. The Wolf King muttered coldly. I suppose it's time I moved myself. Run while you can, little rats. I'll mince you all the same. They departed from the Black Bear sect and began marching toward the Asura sect. After some time, they reached the crest of a hill. From there, a vast city spread out before their eyes. Mu Kyung squinted at the view below. Have we arrived? Mujin nodded. Yeah. As he gazed at the city, his thoughts grew heavy. This was Guilin, in Guangxi province. From here on, everything would become complicated. One of their main reasons for coming to Guangxi had been to wipe out New Heaven's forces, and in that regard, they had largely succeeded. Now, only one objective remained, to bring back 2 people believed to be within the Minor Azure sect. The problem was that reaching the Minor Azure sect meant passing directly through Guilin. And Guilin was no ordinary city. It was the territory of Hyok Jingang, one of the 10 great martial masters of the world, and one of New Heaven's central strongholds. A city that would later become the largest slave market in the Central Plains. A truly wretched place. Some time later, the group walked through Guilin's streets. Mu Kyung looked around, puzzled. I thought a city ruled by unorthodox sects would feel different. But on the surface, it doesn't seem much different from anywhere else. Muyo glanced at him. What kind of place were you expecting? I figured it'd be chaos everywhere. Mu Kyung replied. Unorthodox types stirring up trouble nonstop. Muyul chuckled. That actually sounds fun. That's not what I meant. Mu Kyung sighed. Anyway, I guess wherever people live, it's all the same. As he spoke, a child suddenly slammed into him and fell to the ground. Mu Kyung and Muyul immediately turned back. Hey, are you hurt? Kid, are you okay? But the child only lay there, trembling in fear. Muyul frowned. Something felt off. In a shaking voice, the child whispered, Please save me. Mom. Dad. Muyul stiffened. Something about him doesn't seem right. At that moment, a man hurried over. Oh my, thank you, he said quickly. He's my son. I scolded him earlier and he ran off. Thanks to you youngsters, I didn't have to chase him down. He reached out to grab the child. Come on now. I'll stop scolding you. Let's go home. Before he could lift him, Mu Kyung stepped forward, his voice suddenly cold. Wait. Are you really his father? The man's expression hardened instantly. You should have just walked away. He snarled. You stupid bastards. At his signal, several thugs appeared, surrounding Mujin's group with clubs and blades. So you found the one who ran, one of them said. Then they noticed the others. Who are these punks? You idiots, let go of him and get out of Guilin. Stop sticking your noses into other people's business. Muyul smiled faintly. This is exactly the kind of city you were imagining, Mu Kyung. Mu Kyung sighed. Yeah. He tightened his grip on the man's arm, the one claiming to be the child's father. Well, if they're committing crimes this openly, it makes things easier. He glanced at Mujin. It's fine if we restrain them and ask a few questions, right? The man screamed. My arm! It's going to break! Mujin smiled calmly. If you were going to do it anyway, why ask? Do whatever you want. Not long after, the thugs lay scattered across the ground, groaning, their faces swollen and bruised. The leader trembled. I'm sorry, great heroes. I'll tell you everything. We're just a merchant group operating in Gillen. Mukyung snorted. And you expect me to believe that? Looks like you still have enough strength to lie. Mujin stepped in. It's not entirely false. You are merchants. It's just that what you sell is special. His eyes sharpened. You're slave traders. And you're affiliated with the Unorthodox Alliance. The man went pale and fell silent. Muya looked at the child, then back at Mujin. If they're slave traders, does that mean this kid is? Mu Kyung didn't wait for the answer. He smacked the man's bald head with his wooden staff, grabbed him by the collar, and snarled. Stop hiding things and talk. There are other kids too, aren't there? Where's your base? The scene shifted to an annex building of the Gillen Merchant Guild. Inside, a sword slick with blood was withdrawn from a corpse. The man holding it spoke coldly. Owner Hyo Mayan. What happened to the child? Hyo Mayan clasped his hands nervously. I apologize, honored guest. Seeing how late it is, something must have gone wrong. Shall I bring you another child instead? The man sheathed his sword slowly. Have you ever heard this saying? When you buy a new sword, what you cut first determines your fortune. Hyo Mayan hesitated. My knowledge is lacking. I wouldn't know. They say the greatest fortune comes from cutting down an entire family. The man continued calmly. That's why I paid a fortune, for the parents and the child together. What meaning is there in cutting some other child? Hyo Mayan bowed deeply. So that's what you intended? I failed to recognize your wishes. I will prepare another family immediately. You'd better, the man replied coldly. My patience is running. A loud crash echoed from outside, cutting him off. He frowned. What is that noise? Hyo Mayan stiffened. I apologize. Something must have happened outside. I'll check at once. He flung open the door. Hey! What's all this noise? We have an honored guest. Before he could finish, Chung-Soo burst forward, his sword flashing. Hyo Mayan drew his blade, but it shattered instantly, sent flying as he was hurled backward and slammed into the floor. The guest narrowed his eyes. What's going on? Hyo Mayan lay stunned. I didn't even see the strike, an incredible martial master. Chung-Soo stepped into the room. Mujin and the others had headed for the main building where the children were supposedly held. Chung-Soo had checked the annex just in case, and found only a handful of guards. Now 2 corpses lay nearby, blood pooling across the floor. If I'd known it would be like this, he thought grimly, I would have gone to the main building instead. Hyo Mayan struggled to his feet. Who are you? Do you even know where you are, pulling something like this? Chung-Soo barely heard him. The horrific scene triggered something deep inside him. A sudden headache pierced his skull, and fragmented memories surged forth. Dead bodies piled around him, his sword soaked in blood, himself as a child standing among the carnage. He clutched his head. What, is this memory? Seeing his strange behavior, both Hyo Mayan and the guest hesitated in confusion. Chung-Soo's thoughts spiraled. Voices echoed in his mind. In the memory, a child looked at him and said, To survive, you have to kill. Chung-Soo's eyes slowly turned red. His expression twisted into something cold, unfamiliar. To survive, he murmured, gripping his sword tighter. I have to kill. The scene shifted to a mountain, where the sword saint and Hyo of the Wudang sect sat across from Grand Master Hyun Guang of the Shaolin Temple. Hyo addressed him directly, demanding that the bald monk explain why Chung-Soo had been dragged into this matter. Hyun Guang calmly replied that he should not worry so much. The sword saint responded that he was not worried, only slightly concerned. The Grand Master asked what exactly he was concerned about. Hyo then explained that it dated back a long time. Chung-Soo's first meeting with them had not been ordinary. It occurred when Song Bek, a first-class disciple, had been traveling through Jianghu under orders to hunt down a band of mountain bandits. After hearing that a nearby village had been attacked, Song Bek rushed there as fast as he could. What he found upon arrival was a mountain of bandit corpses. Sitting atop that pile was a child who looked no older than 10. With a chipped sword slung over his shoulder, the child had been tearing into a crow's carcass and eating it. People had said the child looked like a beast. Moved by pity, Song Bek brought the child back to Wudang, where they raised him and gave him the name Chung-Soo. After hearing this, Hyun Guang remarked that it was hard to believe the pure and gentle Chung Su had such a past, and wondered if the Chung Su they knew now had become gentle thanks to Wudong's teachings. Hyo denied that explanation. He said that Chung Su had already lost all his memories from the very beginning, likely because the experience had been so traumatic that he had buried them himself. As Chung Su learned the principles of flow, Hyo had hoped the turmoil within him would settle, even slightly. However, he acknowledged that the world was not made only of beautiful things. His concern was that if Chung Su were to experience something similar to what he had endured as a child, the buried memories might awaken and torment him once again. The scene then shifted back to the annex. Chung Su, his eyes glowing red, stared at the wealthy man who had killed the children's parents earlier. His sword was already pierced through Hyo Mayan's stomach, and Hyo Mayan trembled in agony while coughing up blood. Hyo Mayan begged him to stop and told him to just kill him already. The rich man, watching the scene, felt intense fear. Chung Su never took his eyes off him, and it felt as though he were facing a wild animal. Chung Su then drove his sword deeper into Hyo Mayan's stomach. Hyo Mayan screamed one final time before his lifeless body collapsed to the ground. Chung Su continued staring at the rich man with those blood-red eyes. Panicking, the rich man insisted that he had nothing to do with the place and claimed he had only come to investigate. Chung Su stepped toward him. The rich man desperately offered money, promising to pay anything and do whatever was asked if he were spared. He even offered an artisan sword, boasting that it was a peerless, legendary blade made by a famous craftsman. Before he could finish speaking, Chung Su swung his sword and cut him down. Lost in his frenzy, Chung Su saw visions of his younger self, swinging a sword while muttering about cutting off heads, planting fear in enemies, killing as many as possible just to live, refusing to die like a dog, and slaughtering others to survive. When he finally regained consciousness, he was drenched in sweat and looked around in shock. He realized that Mugong was carrying him on his back. Mugong asked whether he had come to his senses. Chung Su asked where they were and why he was being carried. Seeing that Chung Su was awake, Muyo waved his hand and informed Mujin. Surprised, Chung Su asked Mugong whether he had been unconscious. Mugong confirmed that he had not woken up for nearly a full day and asked if he felt any better, offering to put him down. Chung Su agreed and asked to be set down. When Mujin approached, he noted that Chung Su was awake. Chung Su apologized for causing so much worry and asked what had happened to him. Mujin, surprised, asked if he truly did not remember anything, including splitting off from the group in Gillen and going to the annex building. Upon hearing the word annex, fragments of memories flashed through Chung Su's mind. A sharp pain shot through his head, and he clenched his teeth while grabbing it. Seeing his condition, Mujin grew nervous and said it would be better for Chung Su to rest longer. For the time being, he planned to focus solely on moving forward for the children's sake. Confused, Chung Su asked what children he meant. Mujin pointed toward a nearby group of children and explained that they were the ones rescued from a slave trader in Gillen. Those who had places to return to had already left, while most of the children who had nowhere to go had stayed behind. Fortunately, the minor Azure sect had agreed to take them in, so the group was traveling together to bring the children there. Chung Su remarked that all of this must have happened while he was unconscious. Mujin lightly tapped him on the shoulder and suggested discussing the earlier events after he had rested more, urging him to focus on recovery for now. Chung Su thanked him. Mujin remained silent as he watched Chung Su move a short distance away. Inwardly, he reflected that there were countless things he wanted to ask Chung Su. The horrific scene he had witnessed at the annex, after Chung Su failed to appear at the meeting place, and the traces of slaughter that were nothing like the Chung Su he thought he knew. Still, he felt that Chung Su needed time alone, and so did he. Now, only the hardest part of the Guangxi province plan remained, recruiting Baek Gowon, the strategist. Baek Gowon was the hidden dragon who guided Du Wulchen, the protagonist of the Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, to become the #1 figure among the unorthodox sects and the kingmaker of Nirim. From an outside perspective, Baek Gowon was an intelligence-type overpowered character designed to compensate for Du Wulchen's shortcomings. In the strategic battles against the new heavens to come, his presence was absolutely essential. However, there was a major problem. The Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles provided almost no information about Baek Gowon during this period, since he was not the protagonist. The only thing that could be inferred was that he was staying with his sick younger sister at the Minor Azure sect. Thus, the final and most critical step of the entire plan was a one-shot, on-the-spot gamble with an unpredictable outcome. Meanwhile, Mu Kyung climbed up a cliff and looked ahead, spotting the buildings of the minor Azure sect in Guangxi province. He returned to the group and informed Mujin that he could see it. Mujin thanked Mu Kyung and told him to come down. Inwardly, he steeled himself, thinking that from this point on, it would begin a battle of wits to recruit the strategist Baek Gowan, one in which he could not see even a single inch ahead. A little later, the group arrived in front of the minor Azure sect's front gate. Mujin knocked on the door and called out, asking if anyone was inside. When no response came, Mujin and the others exchanged confused looks. After a short while, someone opened the door slightly, looking nervous, and asked who they were and what business they had with the minor Azure sect, adding that outsiders were not accepted lightly. Mujin smiled and introduced them as physicians from Sichuan. He explained that they had heard of the minor Azure sect's reputation and had come seeking them. He said they had gathered children from nearby villages who had no homes and asked if they could entrust those children to the sect. The man asked in surprise if they were physicians and had even come to entrust children. He then welcomed them to the minor Azure sect and said the gate would be opened. Mu Kyung whispered to Mujin that this truly seemed to be the only orthodox sect in the unorthodox region. Since arriving in Guangxi, this was the first time he had felt relieved. The man opened the gate fully and urged them to come inside quickly. Mu Kyung and the others guided the children forward, telling them that the sect was welcoming them. As soon as they entered, the gate behind them closed immediately. At that moment, a man stepped forward to greet the group, calling it wonderful news and welcoming them to the minor Azure sect as heroes. He introduced himself as Jin Jikyol, the sect leader. Mujin thanked him for his hospitality and introduced himself as Mujin, the one leading the group. Jin Jikyol said that Hero Mujin had arrived at exactly the right time and explained that the sect had been facing great difficulty lately. Mujin asked what kind of difficulty he meant. Jin Jikyol explained that Guangxi province was unorthodox territory and that, because of this, the minor Azure sect had been given a special mission by the Murim Alliance. Mujin asked what kind of mission it was and whether it was something they were allowed to hear. Jin Jikyol chuckled and said it was nothing grand. Turning toward the children, he explained that their task was simply to gather children in Guangxi and send them to Hunan province. Mujin asked if the Murim Alliance had truly given such an order. Jin Jikyol replied sadly that children who grew up in Guangxi often ended up sold as slaves or becoming members of bandit or raider groups. To prevent that future, the Murim Alliance had decided to take preventive measures. Since the minor Azure sect was the only orthodox sect in Guangxi, all of that responsibility had fallen on them. Mujin then asked what the difficult situation was. Jin Jikyol explained that some time ago, a plague had begun spreading among the children under their protection. Starting about 2 months earlier, the children had developed unexplained high fevers and rashes. All the sect could do was isolate them. In such a remote region, calling for a physician was difficult, so they had no other choice. He shamelessly asked whether the physicians would be willing to take a look at the children. A little later, Mujin and Mugum covered their faces with masks and their hands with gloves as they prepared to enter the isolated buildings. Mujin thought that this had not been mentioned in the unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles. Still, as long as he circulated his inner energy, he should not catch the plague. He knew he would have to face it head-on if he wanted to recruit Baek Gowan, and if his guess was correct, they might even be able to cure it using a particular method. Once ready, Mujin told Mugum that they were going in. Mugum wondered why he had to go in as well. Mujin pushed open the door and stepped inside, immediately smelling an odd stench. He wondered what kind of smell it was. Mugum noticed someone standing in the darkness and quietly pointed it out to Mujin. A child covered in rashes approached them and warned them not to come any further, saying the illness could spread and that no one had recovered from the plague yet. Mugum observed the child and thought that the rashes were exactly as they had heard. He wondered what Mujin was trying to do, since they were not real physicians. The child said that if there was any improvement, he would come inform them and urge them to turn back, warning that it was dangerous. Mugum was about to say something but stopped when he saw Mujin moving toward the child. He called out in alarm, asking what Mujin was doing. The child also looked confused by Mujin's actions. As Mujin drew closer, the child said that Mujin was not from the minor Azure sect. Mujin replied that this was correct and explained that they were physicians from another region who had stopped by the sect to entrust some children. He added that they had heard there were patients there and had come to take a look. Hearing this, the child's eyes widened in shock. He asked whether Mujin had brought children there and suddenly grabbed Mujin's hand, confusing him. The child removed the mask covering his face and urgently told Mujin to listen carefully to what he was about to say. Seeing the skin beneath the mask, Mujin noticed that it was completely free of rashes. The child told Mujin to take the children and leave immediately, warning that the minor Azure sect was not the kind of sect they believed it to be. Meanwhile, elsewhere within the minor Azure sect, Chung Su sat alone with his back against the wall, staring at his hands as if they were soaked in blood. He thought that the memories of that day were hazy, as though covered in fog, but the sticky sensation of murderous intent and rage, compressed into something tangible, still remained in his hands. He let out a sigh and muttered to himself, wondering what this feeling was and how something like it could ever be erased. At that moment, he heard a voice nearby telling someone to come this way. He turned his head to see who it was. He saw Jin Jikyol, the leader of the minor Azure sect, speaking to his disciple and telling him to go along with a certain person. Chung Su immediately recognized them. He noticed the child with the sect leader and thought that the child was one of those they had brought earlier. The disciple then took the child away. Jin Jikyol immediately left the area. Watching this, Chung Su grew uneasy. He wondered why they were taking only that child away without a word and felt that something was wrong. He questioned where they were taking him. Some time earlier, the child had been sitting alone on a set of stairs, lost in thoughts of his mother and father. Jin Jikyol approached him and asked why he was sitting there alone, wondering if something was troubling him. Startled, the child immediately stood up and tried to leave, saying that it was nothing. Jin Jikyol then asked if he wanted to see his parents. The child turned back in confusion, and Jin Jikyol told him that if that was the case, he could help. He offered to take the child to see his parents. After a brief hesitation, the child agreed and told him to lead the way. The scene later shifted to the isolated buildings, where the child covered in rashes spoke to Mujin about the minor Azure sect. Mujin thought in disbelief that the child was not actually sick and questioned why he had been pretending. The child explained that the illness was an act meant to keep the minor Azure sect's people from approaching him. He said it was only a temporary disguise that would eventually be discovered. He revealed that although the minor Azure sect was known to be protecting children under the Murim Alliance's orders, that reputation was false. They spread believable rumors, looted anyone who brought a child there, and eventually sold the children elsewhere. He warned that it was a trap. While he himself had circumstances that prevented him from leaving, it was not too late for Mujin and the others. Mujin reflected that the child had been boldly deceiving adults. If someone that clever had stayed here instead of escaping long ago, then there was no doubt about it. The child had to be Baek Gawan. The circumstances he mentioned must have referred to his younger sister, Baek Garyang, who was sick and unable to move. That confirmed he truly was here. Mujin removed his mask and thanked the child for the warning, saying that they would not run away on their own. He reassured him that they would handle the situation themselves. Elsewhere, a disciple and the child arrived in front of a large wooden gate. The disciple told the child that they had arrived. The child asked if his parents were inside. The disciple replied that they were and said that if the child went inside, he would be able to meet them. He then opened the door and entered the room with the child. The moment the child saw the inside, his eyes widened in shock. The room resembled a slaughterhouse. Realizing what the place truly was, the child froze in horror. With a dark expression, the disciple told him that, just as promised, he would let him meet his parents. Terrified, the child immediately turned around and tried to run. The disciple swiftly grabbed the cloth wrapped around the child's neck, dragged him to a table, and slammed him down. Holding the child's right arm firmly, he picked up an axe and demanded to know where he thought he was going. He mocked the child for wanting to see his parents, complaining that the meat they had stored had gone bad, leaving them unable to eat for 2 months. He asked if the child had any idea how much everyone had been holding back. He said they would send the child to his parents, but only after using him first. Trembling, the child begged to be spared. The disciple raised the axe and remarked that there did not seem to be enough meat, so they would simply have to share it properly. Seeing the raised axe, the child cried out for help. At that moment, the disciple heard a noise from the door and turned toward it in confusion. He saw Chung Su bursting through the door and laughing as he unleashed several sword-sheath slashes toward him. Grinding his teeth in fury, Chung Su continued his assault, but the disciple blocked the slashes with his axe. The disciple mocked Chung Su, saying that he had been given a chance to run away but had wasted it over a mere chunk of meat, calling him soft. Chung Su responded by calling him an animal. He accused him of abandoning basic human decency and using a child as a shield, questioning how they could dare call themselves an orthodox sect while committing such acts. The disciple laughed and called Chung Su's words foolish. He declared that they were not the minor Azure sect at all, but the Mad Demon Bandits, a group that had made a name for itself around Guangzhou. He explained that they had moved their territory to Guangxi province and had been looking for a place to settle. After finding an orthodox sect, they disguised themselves as a merchant guild, claimed they had been attacked by Green Forest bandits, and asked for help. The sect had believed them completely. As repayment, they drugged their food and attacked at night, wiping them out without resistance. Since then, they had been pretending to be the Minor Azure sect for 10 years. He mocked the naivete of the orthodox sect and scoffed at being lectured about righteousness. Chung Su tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes burning red with rage. He declared that they were not worth sparing and were nothing but animals. The disciple pressed the axe against the child's neck and warned Chung Su not to move, saying he might kill the child by accident if startled. Chung Su gritted his teeth in frustration and called him a coward. The disciple replied that animals did not understand cowardice. He added that Chung Su had more important things to worry about than a mere piece of meat, revealing that he had sent Chung Su's companions a little gift, food laced with a generous amount of paralysis poison. The scene shifted to Mu Kyung, who was surprised that the Minor Azure sect had sent them food. The sect members delivering it explained that their sect leader had ordered them to do so and said it was only natural to repay honored guests for their help. They asked him not to refuse their sincerity. Mu Kyung thanked them and asked that their sect leader be thanked on their behalf. After the Minor Azure sect members left, Mu Kyung stared nervously at the food boxes, wondering if everything would truly be fine. The scene shifted back to the slaughterhouse, where a mad demon bandit claimed that he had sent Chung Su's companions a small gift, food loaded with a generous amount of paralysis poison. However, Chung Su kept his focus fixed on the mad demon bandit, who was holding a child hostage. He carefully searched for even the slightest mistake, waiting for a chance to attack and save the child. Noticing Chung Su's lack of reaction, the bandit mocked him, remarking that Chung Su showed no concern and questioning whether he had truly been close to the companions who came with him. Chung Su replied calmly that the reason he was not shaken was because he trusted them. The bandit ground his teeth in frustration and dismissed it as nonsense. Inwardly, he felt growing panic. He realized he was barely holding on thanks to the hostage, and at the moment he let his guard down even slightly, he would be killed for certain. Cold sweat ran down the bandit's face as he met Chung Su's intensely focused, red-tinged eyes. Those eyes stirred something familiar within him. Suddenly, realization struck. He had seen them before. Those beast-like eyes were the same ones he had seen 10 years ago. At the same time, Chung Su was sweating heavily, forcing himself to maintain focus despite a severe headache that refused to subside. He wondered why it had to happen now, of all times. With a trembling hand, the bandit pointed one of his axes toward Chung Su and accused him, saying that he finally remembered his face and asking whether Chung Su had followed them all this way. Chung Su questioned what the bandit was suddenly talking about. The bandit shouted angrily, accusing Chung Su of pretending ignorance. He insisted that he recognized those eyes and declared that Chung Su was from a rural village near Qinghai province, attacked 10 years ago, and that there was no way he could forget them. Upon hearing the name of the village, buried memories from 10 years ago resurfaced in Chung Su's mind. A sharp pain surged through his head as confusion overwhelmed him, and he wondered what was happening and why these memories were returning. The bandit continued shouting, claiming that on that day, Chung Su had slaughtered them like dogs, killing even those who tried to run or begged for mercy. He raged that they had been forced to flee to Shanxi with nothing left. He cursed Chung Su as an insane monster, accusing him of calling them worthless animals and claiming that Chung Su was no different from them, insisting that Chung Su was the one who had turned them into what they were. Overwhelmed by the pain in his head, Chung Su collapsed to his knees, barely able to endure it. This sudden opening confused the bandit at first, but he quickly seized the opportunity. Believing it was his chance, the bandit rushed forward, determined to kill Chung Su immediately. Before the bandit could strike, Mujin arrived and delivered a powerful flying kick. The swift whirlwind sweep smashed into the bandit's chest, sending him crashing violently into the wall. Mujin let out a sigh of relief before turning to Chung Su and asking if he was all right. Chung Su questioned why Mujin had come there. Mujin explained that a child he had met at an isolated building had told him about the place. Hearing that children were being dragged there, Mujin had come to investigate. He then asked how Chung Su had discovered the location. Chung Su explained that he had seen the Minor Azure sect leader taking a child away and felt something was suspicious, so he followed them and found the place. He then warned Mujin that the others might be in danger, explaining what the bandit had said about poisoning the food and planning an attack. Although he was unsure whether it was true, he urged Mujin to confirm it. Mujin acknowledged the warning and said he would head there immediately, but asked once more whether Chung Su was truly all right. Chung Su answered that he was fine and believed he was simply exhausted. Mujin instructed him to look after the child for the time being and to get some rest, saying they would talk later. As Chung Su looked down at his own hands, he reflected that the bloodstains were not something that had merely gotten on him, they were his own doing. Even if he had forgotten, he realized he could never truly erase it. Meanwhile, Mujin arrived at the residence where the group was staying. He destroyed the front gate with an invincible punch and rushed inside. As he scanned the surroundings, he called out for Mu Kyung and Muyul, asking if they were safe. He then froze upon seeing that Muyul and Mu Kyung had already defeated their attackers. Mu Kyung turned toward Mujin nervously and acknowledged his arrival. Mujin wondered what had happened but noted with relief that they did not appear to be seriously injured. Mu Kyung explained that earlier, members of the Minor Azure sect had brought food as a gesture of gratitude. Feeling it would be rude to refuse, they accepted it. Just as they were about to eat, the monkey Lingling suddenly attacked the food and knocked everything over. Lingling had become strangely furious, and while they were panicking, members of the Minor Azure sect burst in angrily. Although Mu Kyung admitted it made sense for them to be upset, since their food was ruined, the group apologized sincerely. Despite that, the sect members still drew their swords. Mujin let out a sigh, realizing the situation. He remarked that Mu Kyung and the others had become quite skilled at subduing people. Mu Kyung replied that he had only knocked them out for the time being. Mujin said that was good and expressed relief that nothing worse had happened. Mu Kyung asked whether they were now in serious trouble. Mujin reassured him, saying he had done well and that those people were dangerous to begin with. Mu Kyung smiled in relief. Mujin cautioned him that next time, he should not resort to fighting without thinking it through. Some time later, after all the mad demon bandits, who had been pretending to be members of the Minor Azure sect, were restrained, Baek Gowon arrived. He commented that Mujin had said he would handle the rest and expressed surprise that everything had been resolved so cleanly in just half a day. Mujin replied that there was still one matter left to resolve. Baek Gowon acknowledged this. Mujin smiled and pointed out that the reason Baek Gowon had been unable to leave the Minor Azure sect remained unresolved. The scene then revealed Baek Gowon's younger sister, Baek Garyong, lying unconscious on a bed. Mujin reflected on Du Wulchen's first companion, the strategist who helped him achieve vengeance for his clan, Baek Gowon. In the story, Baek Gowon had a younger sister who was seriously ill. Her illness originated from a special constitution. She had been born with overwhelmingly powerful, innate yin energy. The extreme cold produced by that yin energy was so intense that it could freeze not only her body, but even the area around her. Meanwhile, Baek Gowon honestly explained to Mujin that when his sister was younger, the condition had not been this severe. At first, her hands and feet had merely been colder than other people's, and she had been more susceptible to the cold. However, as she grew older, her yin energy gradually intensified, and eventually she began struggling to endure the cold on her own. Lately, she had been spending most of her time asleep, likely because simply suppressing the cold within her body had already become too much for her. As he spoke, Baek Gowon gently placed a cloth soaked in warm water on his sister's head. He continued, explaining that they had visited many clinics reputed to be famous. Aside from learning that her condition was a type of blocked meridians disorder, they had found no other answers. All he could do was remain by his sister's side as she grew weaker, and little by little, he had begun to lose hope as well. Still, he believed there was meaning in heaven's will that had brought Mujin and the others there, and he begged them to save his sister. Mujin considered the situation. Just as stomach ailments were treated with medicine and wounds with surgery, problems rooted in inner energy had to be treated with inner energy itself. He instructed Mugung to begin the treatment. Mugung sat beside Baek Garyong, extended his palm toward her, and a green glow formed as his inner energy manifested. Mugung carefully regulated the power of the Rulai divine palm strikes pure, extreme yang energy, injecting it slowly so it circulated through the patient's meridian points throughout her entire body. The heat flowed through her meridians without harming her, merged with her cold energy, neutralized it, and brought balance and harmony. Watching this, Baek Gowon remarked that he had never seen treatment like that before. Mujin explained that it was one of the treatment methods used by the body treatment clinic, known as heat therapy. When Baek Gowon asked about the clinic, Mujin explained that it was a large-scale medical institution established on the Orthodox faction's side a few years earlier. Baek Gowon remarked that the orthodox factions possessed such treatments, and that he had wanted his sister to receive them as well. However, Guangxi province was territory controlled by the unorthodox factions and ruled by the unorthodox alliance. With only the two of them as children, it had been impossible to even leave the province. Mujin reflected on the unorthodox alliance, an alliance of 7 unorthodox factions formed to oppose the orthodox factions. It was the largest unorthodox group of the era and one of the main antagonistic forces in the unorthodox tyrant chronicles. Du Wulchen's path had begun with the annihilation of the Jaegao clan, followed by the defeat of Hyuk Jingang, the leader of the unorthodox alliance, and the discovery of the true power backing him. After that, he had started a war with the New Heavens. Yet even as he fought the unorthodox alliance, Du Wulchen's hands had already been stained with blood. In the end, he became a public enemy of Mirim, and the one who presented him with a solution had been Baek Gowon. In the story, Baek Gowon had warned Du Wulchen that seeking vengeance for his clan at the cost of everything was reckless, no matter how exceptional his martial arts were, especially if he faced the entire unorthodox alliance alone. When Du Wulchen asked what he meant, Baek Gowon advised him to spread the fact that he was the one who annihilated the Jaegao clan and use that infamy as a foundation to build a new force within the unorthodox sections. Du Wulchen objected, saying that was not the right path. Baek Gowon countered that good and evil, justice, and morality no longer mattered. If Du Wulchen truly wanted vengeance, he would have to abandon the orthodox path and walk the unorthodox one. From that point on, he could no longer embrace both. He needed to cast aside a double-edged heart, ignite the will of a single blade, and walk the path of a cunning hero who would not hesitate to use any means necessary, a path befitting a name that carried the word blade. In the present, Mujin reflected that Du Wulchen had ultimately cast aside the sword and taken up the blade, walking the path of the unorthodox sect in earnest. With Baek Gowon at his side, they eventually succeeded in bringing down the unorthodox alliance, but at the very end, his thoughts were interrupted as green energy spread throughout the room. Seeing this, Mujin realized that the injection of extreme yang energy was complete. At that moment, Baek Gyeryong muttered softly and woke up, rubbing her eyes. Still confused, she called out to her brother before she could fully open them. Baek Gowon rushed to her side and embraced her, crying with relief that she had truly woken up. He then turned to Mujin and expressed his deep gratitude, wondering how he could ever repay such kindness. Meanwhile, Baek Gyeryong looked at Mujin with confusion. Mujin reassured Baek Gowon that repayment was unnecessary and asked Baek Gyeryong how she was feeling. She replied in short phrases, saying that she felt weak, that there was still cold energy, but that it was not unbearable. Mujin found her phrasing puzzling. Baek Gowon explained that his sister had a habit of speaking in short phrases because she lacked energy, and that what she meant was that her body, once filled with cold, felt as though it had recovered a little. Mujin understood. Baek Gowon then introduced the group to his sister, explaining that they were healers from Sichuan who had treated her illness and also taken down the minor Azure Sex gang. Baek Gyeryong looked toward Mugung, who smiled back at her. She appeared slightly confused and lost in thought. At that moment, Mujin cautioned them not to relax yet. If the treatment was not continued, her condition could relapse. Her constitution needed to be changed, which meant she would require several more treatments. He explained that they would soon be leaving the minor Azure sect and asked whether Baek Gowon would come with them for his sister's continued treatment. Baek Gowon immediately agreed, saying that since they had found a way to treat his sister, he would follow them anywhere. He also vowed to repay the kindness they had shown in saving him, his sister, and the other children. Baek Gyeryong then softly mentioned Songzhan Shaolin. Without thinking, Mujin confirmed that they were headed to Shaolin at Songzhan, only for both him and Mugung to freeze in confusion at how she knew this. Baek Gyeryong continued, reciting fragmented phrases about Shaolin's great monks, repaying kindness with devotion, and a narrow escape from death. Mujin asked how she knew they were from Shaolin. She explained calmly that it was nothing surprising. Innate yin energy countered yang energy, and since her illness stemmed from innate yin energy, it required yang inner energy for treatment. However, most martial arts yang energy could not be used for healing. What was required was a martial art that used pure yang energy while allowing precise control, and the only one she knew that met those conditions was Shaolin's Rulai Divine Palm Strike. Mujin was astonished. He realized that she understood everything, from the cause of her illness to its cure. This was Baek Gowon's younger sister, someone he had claimed was even more talented than himself. According to the original story, the unorthodox alliance would covet Baek Gyeryong's constitution and purchase her, and by the time Baek Gowon found her again, it would already be too late. In the end, both Du Wulchen and Baek Gowon would become so broken that they could no longer maintain their sanity, leaving them with nothing but vengeance. Mujin reflected that even if by coincidence, he might have gained something even more valuable than a brilliant strategist like Baek Gowon. Having already interfered with the novel's plot, he resolved not to let this tragedy repeat itself simply because it was fated. Saving as many people as possible might be what he was meant to do there. The scene then shifted to late at night, to one of the buildings where all the mad demon bandits were restrained. Someone approached them with a sword. Upon seeing him, the bandits began to tremble in fear. The one who entered was Chung Su, who declared that he had thought it through and reached a conclusion of his own, that those beasts were not worth keeping alive. Chung Su recalled the day 10 years ago, when his small, peaceful village near Qinghai was engulfed in flames. The mad demon bandits had stormed in, setting the village on fire and slaughtering its people without mercy. Their leader ordered his subordinates to kill everyone and loot everything, declaring that they should show exactly what kind of bastards the mad demon bandits were. The bandits responded eagerly and carried out his command. At that moment, the leader noticed something unusual and demanded to know what it was. Standing some distance away was a child holding a sword. The leader questioned what a child was doing there. That child was Chung Su. Several bandits approached him, laughing cruelly as they mocked him and asked whether he was searching for his parents. They told him to search thoroughly, claiming that if he looked hard enough, he might find a finger or something similar. Chung Su immediately dropped into a fighting stance and swung his sword. Before the bandits could even react, he cut them down. In the present, Chung Su recalled that scene, how he had killed the mad demon bandits 10 years earlier. He let out a deep sigh as the restrained bandits around him were already lying dead by his hand. At that moment, Mujin arrived and called out to him. With blood-red eyes, Chung Su turned to face him. Mujin asked if he was all right. Chung Su glanced at the lifeless bodies of the mad demon bandits, and replied that he was fine, explaining that he had simply made them pay for their sins. Mujin responded that he was not trying to defend them, but questioned whether Chung Su truly needed to execute them so brutally, remarking that it was unlike him. Chung Su clenched his teeth in agitation and asked whether Mujin truly knew him well enough to say that. Mujin, confused, asked him to clarify. Chung Su raised his sword and declared that Mujin was mistaken about one thing before swinging it at him. Mujin blocked the attack and demanded to know what he was doing. Chung Su declared that this was his true nature and released his sword chi. Mujin blocked the energy as well, then immediately reached out, grabbed Chung Su by the collar, and slammed him to the floor. Mujin told him that it was the same as before, recalling how Chung Su had deliberately tried to provoke him in the past. He explained that he had realized then that Chung Su always acted that way when he wanted something. Mujin stated that Chung Su had clearly been troubled for days and assured him that he would listen, urging him to explain what had been bothering him. Chung Su remained silent for a moment before revealing that those men had been a band of mountain bandits known as the Mad Demon Bandits, the same ones who had raided his village when he was a child. He explained that his village had been small and peaceful, but that peace had not lasted. He vividly remembered the screams of people begging for their lives and the laughter of the bandits, as they mocked and killed them. In the midst of that chaos, he had been frozen in helplessness, feeling nothing except the desire to live. He had picked up a sword from the ground and begun killing anyone who approached him. Later, when he looked back on it, he realized that he had not been swinging his sword merely to survive, he had been swinging it to kill. By sheer luck, he had later been found and taken in by the Taoists. However, being weak, he had fled from those memories, hiding his true nature and the beast within him. He had believed that was the only way he would be accepted, and he confessed that he had been deceiving the Taoists all along. Hearing this, Mujin understood that encountering those men again had caused Chung Su's suppressed memories to resurface, shaking the very foundation of the principles he had learned in Wudong. Mujin released him and stood up, addressing him as Taoist Chung Su. He explained that, in the end, Chung Su had done what he did to survive and asked whether he truly blamed himself for it. With a sigh, Mujin admitted that he did not believe Chung Su's actions had been entirely wrong. Considering what those men had done, Mujin believed they were people who deserved to die. If Chung Su had not killed them back then, not only would he have died, but many more people, and children, would have suffered afterward. Mujin pointed out that Jianghu was filled with villains, and in such a world, it was impossible to avoid staining one's hands with blood. Even Shaolin had individuals specifically tasked with dealing with people like them. Chung Su responded that even if his actions had been for survival, he could not deny that he had tried to kill as many as possible. He admitted that he feared the beast inside him might be his true nature. He was afraid that the person he was now, along with Wudong's teachings, would be erased, leaving only the beast behind until he became a monster like them. Mujin lightly tapped him on the shoulder, understanding that Chung Su was afraid of losing himself. He told Chung Su that while he understood his fear, he could not look away from it. The memories and killing intent from his past were also part of him, just as the restraint, discipline, and goodness he had cultivated in Wudong were part of him as well. Mujin urged him not to cast aside any part of himself, but to embrace even his past as part of Wudong's principles, just as the Taoists had accepted him for the sake of his future, without any ulterior motives. He told Chung Su that he, too, had to accept himself for the future of the child who had taken up the sword due to a tragic accident. Chung Su expressed his gratitude for Mujin's guidance. The scene then shifted to the largest green forest stronghold in Guangxi, the Great Tiger Stronghold, which was engulfed in flames. Its leader lay wounded on the ground, having been injured by the Wolf King's subordinates. The Wolf King questioned whether the information was true, asking if those enemies had been targeting the North Wind escort establishment from the very beginning. The Tiger Stronghold leader confirmed that it was true. When the Wolf King asked where they had gone, the wounded leader claimed to know and begged for his life. Before he could finish speaking, the Wolf King gestured to his subordinate, who immediately drove a sword through the Tiger Stronghold leader. The man screamed in pain before dying. The Wolf King then ordered his subordinates to release the wolves into Gilan, declaring that they would flush their enemies out and hunt them down. The scene shifted to the Minor Azure sect, where Baek Gowon shared his thoughts. He explained that, most likely in the near future, they should expect a large-scale raid from the unorthodox faction. Mujin asked what he meant by a raid. Gowon explained that a few men from the Minor Azure sect had managed to escape. He was certain they would gather more people and soon return to attack the place. Mujin wondered if they would really go that far and questioned what reason they would have. Gowon explained that the first reason was the wealth they had stockpiled. All the assets they had amassed over 10 years of looting were still there, untouched. The second reason, he added, was their numbers. Confused, Mujin asked what he meant by their numbers. Gowon clarified that with only the people they currently had, they were severely short-handed to defend the place. Their lack of manpower would give the enemy the perfect excuse to launch an attack. Malgung smiled and confidently remarked that it would not matter how many of those bastards came. However, before he could finish his sentence, Gowon calmly stated that the raiding force was estimated to be around 200 people. Malgung immediately fell silent. Mujin then pointed out that since Gowon had brought up the issue first, he must already have a plan. Gowon admitted that it would not be easy, but he believed the best option was to reduce their numbers before the enemy could fully gather. In other words, they would strike first. Thus, under Baek Gowon's command, the interception operation began. First, Muyul and Lingling were tasked with delivering letters requesting reinforcements. Both were skilled at navigating mountain paths, and Lingling knew the routes well, making them ideal for the mission. Starting that very night, the group began intercepting all unorthodox forces near the Minor Azure sect. They launched a night raid on the vanguard leadership, then lured the Green Forest bandits responsible for communications into a trap and wiped them out. After that, they ambushed incoming reinforcements, countered an interception squad that attempted to stop them, carried out another night raid, and finally took a brief rest. A few days later, while resting, Mujin wondered aloud how many days had passed, remarking that there seemed to be no end to their enemies. At that moment, more bandits approached an empty carriage the group had been using as bait in their lure and wipe strategy. Noticing them, Mujin immediately warned the others not to fall asleep because they needed to move again. Soon after, they raided the leadership's main base and continued their raids one after another. Exhausted, Magung asked when they would finally get to rest. Mujin admitted that he did not know either. After a few more exhausting weeks of constant fighting, Muyul finally returned from afar, bringing reinforcements with him. A carriage arrived carrying the branch of the body treatment clinic from the Heavenly Mandate sect. Sect leader Hyo Suk stepped down respectfully and greeted Mujin, saying it was an honor to meet Hero Kanghyuk. He explained that they had received the letter and had come to escort the children. Mujin thanked him for traveling all the way to Guangxi and apologized for making such an unreasonable request. Hyo Suk replied that it was no trouble at all. He explained that the young lady had instructed them to cooperate as much as possible whenever it concerned Mujin. However, he also observed that everyone looked exhausted and asked if they were all right. Mujin chuckled nervously and admitted that a lot had happened. Hyo-suk confirmed that he understood the situation from the letter and stated that they would immediately take the children to the Heavenly Mandate sect. He then asked what Mujin and his group planned to do. Mujin explained that they still had work to do in Hunan province and asked him to take good care of the children. Some time later, the children boarded the carriages and departed with the Heavenly Mandate sect. Mujin and Muyo waved goodbye as they left. Mujin reflected that, just like that, every objective they had come to Guangxi for had been successfully completed. They had destroyed the North Wind escort establishment, which would have become New Heaven's future source of wealth, and they had also achieved another major goal by turning Baek Gowon into an ally. At that moment, Gowon approached him and informed him that the carriage preparations were complete, and they could depart at any time. Mujin praised the effort and ordered them to leave immediately. Gowon nodded and said he would relay the message to the others. Although there had been many twists and turns, Mujin considered the mission a success. He resolved to maintain this momentum and continue onward to Hunan province. Later, as Mujin began driving the carriage, he informed his companions that they would meet Du Wulchen in Hunan province. Since it was nearby, he suggested they should check in on him as well. However, Mujin also knew that was not the only reason. Around this time, the Heavenly Flash sect was destined to face a major crisis. As the first step in taking control of the Central Plains Murim, the New Heavens faction would begin targeting mid and small-sized sections. While he was deep in thought, Mu Kyung suddenly shouted his name and pointed out that someone was standing ahead of them. When Mujin saw the figure, he was shocked. The man standing in their path was none other than the Wolf King. With a cruel smile, the Wolf King raised his weapon and declared that he had finally caught those rat bastards. Realizing the danger, Mujin immediately shouted for everyone to get off the carriage. In the next moment, the Wolf King unleashed an energy slash that completely destroyed the carriage. Magum quickly grabbed Gowon and his sister Garyong and jumped away, while the others also leapt clear just before the attack struck. Grinding his teeth in frustration, Mujin realized the truth. The man before them really was the Wolf King. Those mad wolves had chased them down. At this point, there was no way to avoid the battle. There was only one choice left: to defeat him right there. Mujin gathered his chi into his right arm and launched his technique, Barrage Strikes, toward the Wolf King. The Wolf King merely smiled and mocked him, asking how a rat could dare bare its fangs at a wolf. He easily blocked Mujin's attack and stomped down, smashing Mujin's arm into the ground and causing him to grit his teeth in pain. Raising the Wolf Fang blade, the Wolf King coldly declared that Mujin was nothing but a rat. Before he could strike, Chung Su rushed forward using the heaven-piercing sword art, while Mu Kyung attacked simultaneously with the 18 Dharma strikes. The Wolf King blocked Chung Su's sword with his weapon and effortlessly dodged Mu Kyung's attack. Recognizing their techniques, he mocked them, saying the 18 Dharma strikes and the heaven-piercing sword art meant they must be from Shaolin and Wudong. Both attackers were shocked that he had blocked their techniques so easily, but they knew there was still one more ally. At that moment, Magum unleashed the exploding fist strike, smashing the ground with tremendous force and destroying the surrounding area. When the dust cleared, Mugung's fist could be seen buried in the shattered ground. The Wolf King scoffed at the display, noting the presence of extreme yang energy. However, he laughed manically and declared that if that was the best they could do, they would all end up as wolf food. Magung turned to Mujin and asked if he was alright. Mujin replied that he was fine thanks to him, but he was more concerned about the Beck siblings. Magung reassured him that he had already told them to hide nearby and that Lingling was with them, so they would be safe. However, he could not help but ask who the monster they were facing really was. Chung Su admitted reluctantly that the man was an incredible martial master. Mu Kyung added that it felt as if the enemy was not even fighting at full strength and was merely toying with them. Mujin confirmed their suspicions. He explained to everyone that the man was known as the Wolf King, a hunting dog of the New Heavens faction sent to capture them. According to Mujin, he was the strongest opponent they had ever faced. If they fought him head-on, their chances of victory were almost non-existent. However, Mujin revealed that he had a plan and told them that he would give a signal when the time came. A little later, the battle continued fiercely. Muyu was struck by one of the Wolf King's attacks and was sent flying backward, crashing into a tree before coughing up blood. The Wolf King laughed mockingly, remarking that it had been worth coming out after all that time. He encouraged them to keep struggling like insects. The group rushed to attack him from all directions, but the Wolf King simply swung his sword, unleashing a powerful strike that blasted them backward. Some crashed into trees while others slammed into the ground. The Wolf King mocked them again, saying they should struggle a little more. Since he had personally come all that way, there was no way he would end the fight so easily. At that moment, Mujin called out to him from behind. The Wolf King immediately turned around in anger. Mujin launched a combined technique, Destroyer's Divine Strike along with Fist Energy, but to his surprise, the Wolf King easily dodged the attack. The Wolf King remarked that he sensed no fear from Mujin and found that commendable. He noted that Mujin had also been the first to step forward earlier. Because of that, he declared that he would grant Mujin something special, the honor of being torn to pieces first. With that, he raised his weapon and swung it toward him. Seeing the incoming attack, Mujin realized he could not dodge it. Instead, he decided to block it using his technique, Golden Sphere Art, Iron Guard. Seeing this, the Wolf King called him an idiot. The attack shattered Mujin's Golden Sphere Art instantly. Mujin realized that the technique alone was not enough to block enhanced energy. The Wolf King shouted that he would split Mujin in half and continued his attack. At that moment, Mujin pulled out a red thread and managed to stop the Wolf King's weapon, though the blade still pierced slightly into his stomach. The red thread and cloth wrapped around his stomach were made from dragon scale armor. Coughing up blood, Mujin declared that the Wolf King had fallen for his trap. The dragon scale armor was a treasure woven into cloth form by refining 10,000-year-old cold iron into threads. Uniquely, it reacted to enhanced protective energy, and became even stronger and tougher. In the original story, the Wolf King had processed the dragon scale armor into full armor, and it later became his symbol along with the Wolf Fang blade, contributing to the slaughter of countless martial artists. After discovering the dragon scale armor among the escort goods of the North Wind escort establishment, Mujin had judged that there was no time to process it into proper armor. Instead, he wrapped the cloth around his body just in case. Although his prediction had not been perfect, it had been close enough for him to successfully block the Wolf King's strike. The Wolf King shouted angrily, demanding to know if that was the dragon scale armor. Furious, he asked how such a lowly bastard dared to lay his filthy hands on it. Mujin calmly asked what the Wolf King planned to do about it, adding that if it had been that precious, he should have guarded it better. Enraged, the Wolf King declared that the armor was a treasure bestowed upon him by his lord's grace, and that Mujin would suffer a horrible death. However, when he tried to pull his sword free, he realized it would not budge. The blade was stuck because Mujin had locked it in place using his ultra-condensed muscles external oblique muscle technique. Despite his trembling body, Mujin smiled and declared that this was what real combat muscles look like. He even mocked the Wolf King by asking if he had ever heard of the enhanced unyielding maiden art. Mujin pointed out that the Wolf King had underestimated them as mere young brats, but now he was the one caught in the trap. At that moment, Mujin's friends rushed forward to attack the Wolf King. Mugung led the charge, swinging his fist. However, the Wolf King easily dodged the attack and immediately counterattacked, kicking Mugung's arm hard and mocking them for daring to play petty tricks on him. Mugung was sent flying and landed some distance away, clutching his injured arm. Mujin called out to him in concern. At the same time, Muyul and Chung Su moved in to attack the Wolf King from both sides. Sensing the danger, the Wolf King leapt high into the air to evade them. Even as he rose into the air, his blade still could not move because Mujin continued to grip it. Irritated, the Wolf King ordered Mujin to let go, threatening to slam him straight into the ground if he did not. At that moment, Mu Kyung suddenly appeared behind the Wolf King and told Mujin that it was time. Mu Kyung unleashed the invincible anti-demon punch technique, striking the Wolf King with tremendous power and slamming him into the ground, shattering the earth where he crashed. The Wolf King realized that his blade had finally been freed. In his mind, he acknowledged that trash like them had managed to coordinate surprisingly well. Still, he believed the obstacle had been removed. Declaring that playtime was over, he promised to kill them all in a single strike as he rose to his feet with a trembling body. However, before he could retaliate, he was struck by the Rulai Divine Palm Strike and a Twin Palm Strike, which slammed him repeatedly into the ground. The attack came from Mugung. The Wolf King was shocked. He was certain he had broken Mugung's arm, yet Mugung was still fighting. Observing closely, he realized that Mugung was using martial arts despite having a broken arm, even though it could cause his blood vessels to burst. Before the Wolf King could escape the overwhelming pressure of the palm strikes pinning him to the ground, Mujin approached him despite his injuries and declared that it was the end. The Wolf King struggled to stand but could not. Grinding his teeth in frustration, he muttered that it was impossible. He was the Wolf King, There was no way he could lose to mere insects. Meanwhile, Mujin gathered his chi into his right arm and delivered a final strike to the Wolf King lying on the ground, triggering a massive explosion. When the dust finally settled, Mujin's hand was soaked in blood, and the lifeless body of the Wolf King lay on the ground. Mujin realized that they had defeated the Wolf King. Thinking that he could finally rest, he collapsed unconscious. Seeing him fall, Mu Kyung shouted in alarm and urgently told everyone to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Mujin lay unconscious on the ground, his thoughts drifting hazily. He felt overwhelmingly sleepy and couldn't understand why. More than that, a sharp pain throbbed at his side, leaving him confused about what he had been doing before everything went dark. As he slowly opened his eyes, his vision blurred. He saw two people tending to him. One of the physicians urgently called out, telling the other to bring hemostatic medicine and bandages immediately. He instructed them to keep transferring energy into Mujin and ensure he kept breathing. Through the haze, Mujin recalled that after defeating the Wolf King, he had simply laid down to rest. Mu Kyung, who was channeling energy into him, noticed the change and informed the physician that Mujin had regained consciousness. However, the physician remained focused, ordering Mu Kyung to continue the energy transfer without interruption. Mujin's thoughts wandered again. He remembered collapsing after the battle, exhausted from non-stop exertion. A part of him wanted to let go, to drift away and rest completely. He wondered if falling asleep now would allow him to return to his previous life, the time when he used to read manga. At that moment, a brilliant light appeared before him. Within it stood Grandmaster Hyun Guang, whose presence startled Mujin. Hyun Guang calmly asked whether Mujin had finished everything he had wanted to do. The question struck deeply. Mujin reflected on his journey, his companions, and everything left undone. Clenching his fist, he firmly declared that he still had much to accomplish, people to save and things to change. He could not allow his story to end there. He reaffirmed his promise to return to Shaolin's northern dipper of Mount Taishan once everything was settled. Satisfied, Hyun Guang told him that was enough for now. But first, he should go meet the person who had been desperately waiting for him. Confused by those words, Mujin tried to ask what he meant, but before he could, his consciousness snapped back. He jolted awake, sitting upright in bed despite the pain from the bandages wrapped around his stomach. Sweat poured down his face as he gasped for breath, instinctively calling out for his grandfather. A voice immediately cautioned him not to move so suddenly. Recognizing the voice, Mujin turned and saw Seolwa standing beside him, her expression serious yet filled with concern. She asked if he was feeling any better. Still disoriented, Mujin questioned how she had come to be there. Seolwa explained that he was in the Nanchang branch of the body treatment clinic in Jiangxi province. 2 weeks earlier, she and her group had brought him and his companions there for treatment. Shocked, Mujin realized he had been unconscious for 2 full weeks. While he remembered defeating the Wolf King, he couldn't understand how they had ended up so far away in Nanchang. Seolwa patiently explained everything. A month earlier, the Heavenly Mandate sect leader had sent her Mujin's letter and report. According to it, Mujin had planned to head to Hunan province. Coincidentally, a guest arrived at the clinic seeking a meeting with Mujin, so she informed him of Mujin's destination and traveled to Hunan with him. Along the way, near the route from Guangxi to Hunan, they witnessed a massive explosion in the forest, along the path connected to the Minor Azure sect. Sensing danger, they formed a search team and rushed to the site. By the time they arrived, the battle had already ended. Fortunately, the guest accompanying them was highly skilled in medicine, allowing them to administer emergency treatment immediately. Afterward, they transported Mujin and his group to the nearest clinic in Nanchang for proper care. Understanding the situation, Mujin asked about his companions. Seolwa reassured him that they were resting in the next room. Although they had suffered fractures, bruises, and extreme fatigue, their condition was better than his. They were safe, with no lasting aftereffects or major injuries. Realizing how close they had come to disaster, Mujin felt a wave of relief. If Seolwa had not arrived in time, or if treatment had been delayed, the outcome could have been far worse. After a moment of hesitation, he nervously asked if she was angry with him. Seolwa looked at him silently, her expression darkening. Sensing the tension, Mujin quickly tried to brush it off, but she called his name firmly. When he responded, she spoke honestly. She had already noticed that Mujin often acted with knowledge others did not possess. However, she chose not to question it, believing that everything he did was for the sake of saving others. She acknowledged that she herself had benefited from his kindness. Yet, she asked if it wouldn't be better for him to stop pushing himself so far. Her voice trembled as tears welled in her eyes. She admitted how terrified she had been, fearing he might never wake up. If that had happened, she wouldn't have known what to do. Moved by her words, Mujin sincerely apologized for causing her worry. Then, with a gentle expression, he extended his hand, hooking his small finger toward her, and asked if he could make a promise with her. Confused, Seolwa asked what kind of promise. Mujin promised that he would definitely return, assuring her that she no longer needed to worry. His words stirred a memory within Seolwa, of a promise they had made as children, when Mujin had helped her reunite with her family after she had been lost in the mountains. She hooked her finger with his and made him promise to keep his word. With a soft smile, Mujin agreed, telling her not to worry. Reassured, Seolwa said she would continue to trust him. Just then, someone opened the door and entered, announcing that they had heard Mujin had regained consciousness. Upon seeing the two of them, the atmosphere turned awkward. The visitor quickly excused himself for interrupting what he called a heartwarming moment and left, closing the door behind him. Outside, Seolwa's attendant scolded the man for barging in. Confused, Mujin asked who the person was. Seolwa explained that he was the guest who had come to meet him, the head of the Yang clan, known as the Divine Physician. After some time, the man returned, this time properly introducing himself as Yang Dongmyeong. With an awkward chuckle, he apologized for his earlier lack of tact and explained that his insistence on meeting Mujin had led to the situation. Mujin asked what business he had with him. Dongmyeong replied that they could discuss that later. For now, he had a request related to the treatment of Mujin's companions. He was curious about the unusual medicine Mujin had brought from Sichuan, and asked for permission to incorporate it into his prescriptions. Hearing this, Mujin grew thoughtful, realizing what the physician might be referring to. Dongmyeong then added that, if he remembered correctly, the medicine was called protein. Some time later, after news spread that Mujin had regained consciousness, his companions rushed into his room, overwhelmed with relief. They expressed that they had truly believed they were going to lose him, and that if Lady Seolwa had not brought the divine physician in advance, things might have ended very differently. Mujin apologized for making everyone worry, but quickly shifted the conversation to something he considered important. He explained that he had called them together to show the finished product of what he had created at the Tang clan. Mu Kyung, curious, asked if he was referring to the item he had developed with the Dark King. Inwardly, Mujin reflected that it was finally a reliable protein supplement they could use in the Murim world. Removing the cloth covering a pot, Mujin revealed the contents and introduced it as black iron powder. This substance was a medicinal training food developed by Mujin and Tang Gak after extensive research. The name symbolized forging the body to be as strong as steel. It functioned as a Murim-style protein supplement. Previously, the group had managed their nutritional needs through specially made cheese, allowing them to maintain balance without harming animals. However, in the fast-paced world of Murim, black iron powder offered unmatched convenience and efficiency. Unfortunately, due to their injuries, neither Mujin nor Mugum was able to consume it. Upon realizing this, Mujin became flustered, worrying aloud about losing muscle. Chung Su, calmly sipping the mixture, confirmed that it was simply mixed with water and consumed as needed. Mu Kyung remarked that he could drink it as easily as Monk Hai Guan drank liquor, but emphasized that both Mugum and Mujin needed to focus on recovery instead. He added that while the supplement was meant to be paired with muscle-lengthening techniques, Mujin should avoid putting strain on his injured side. Muyo then suggested to Lingling that they practice the technique while drinking it. Meanwhile, Mujin lamented internally that he was stuck taking medicine for the time being, feeling frustrated at the situation. Noticing his condition, Seolwa called out to him with concern. Mugum, however, reassured her that Mujin had only collapsed from shock, joking that he was overly obsessed with muscle training. Ironically, the one who had created the supplement was the only one unable to use it. Some time later, Mujin approached Dongmyeong while he was taking his medicine and asked if he could also consume black iron powder. Dongmyeong gave a cautious response, stating that Mujin was free to try, but he would not take responsibility for the consequences. He warned that many in Murim had crippled themselves by stubbornly pushing their bodies beyond their limits, questioning whether Mujin believed himself to be any different. Mujin then asked how long his recovery would take. Dongmyeong explained that under normal circumstances it would take about a month, but given their unusually fast recovery rate, 15 days should suffice. Hearing this, Mujin began to plan ahead. Since he was unable to train, he resolved to use the time to think and organize his next steps. However, During this contemplation, he sensed something unexpected. His inner energy had begun to recover, even if only slightly. This led him to realize that the medicine he was receiving was far from ordinary. Noticing Mujin's surprise, Dong Myung remarked with amusement that it was rare to see the blessed monk so taken aback. Mujin, puzzled, asked how Dong Myung knew about him. Dong Myung explained that he had heard of a treatment his late father had failed to complete, one that had been successfully accomplished by a novice monk not yet 15 years old. Mujin connected this to his treatment of Grand Master Hyungwang, recalling that many attempts had been made in the past. He realized that Dong Myung's predecessor must have been one of those involved. Dong Myung admitted that this was precisely why he had taken such an interest in Mujin, especially after observing his condition. He then proposed a deal. In exchange for covering the costs of the journey and treatment, he wished to exchange his medical knowledge for Mujin's body treatment techniques. He mentioned that Lady Seowa had indicated such an arrangement would require Mujin's approval. Mujin understood that Seowa had likely intended to create a connection between him and the divine physician. He recognized that forming such a relationship could prove invaluable in future emergencies. Feeling grateful for her consideration, he accepted the situation positively. Thus, an exchange between the divine physician's knowledge and Mujin's techniques was set in motion, signaling favorable prospects for his journey ahead. However, not all developments were positive. The scene shifted to Shaolin Temple, where a petition had arrived. Shortly afterward, the senior monks gathered in the meeting hall. Abbot Hyun Chun asked the junior monk about the origin of the petition, and it was revealed to have come from the Unorthodox Alliance. While Mujin and his group focused on recovery, the scene shifted again to Mount Wudong, where a similar letter had been received. Sword Saint Anhyo questioned the arrival of the message from the Murim Alliance. As both factions reviewed the contents, it became clear that schemes had been unfolding behind the scenes. The letter publicly accused Shaolin's 4 monks and Chung Su of roaming the land, slaughtering green forest bandits, and disrupting the Hidden Heavens Society's legal markets. It demanded their lives, along with an explanation from both Shaolin and Wudong. Hyun Myung, the administration hall leader, expressed concern that mishandling the situation could spark a war between orthodox and unorthodox factions. In response, Abbot Hyun Chun dismissed the accusations with a calm chuckle, stating that the disciples in question had long been in closed-door training. This claim surprised the assembled monks. At Mount Wudong, Anhyo similarly asserted that Chung Su had been diligently training there. Back at Shaolin, the abbot confirmed this stance with Grand Master Hyungwang. Both sides delivered the same message. The accusations were baseless, and rather than wasting time on false claims, the opposing factions should mind their own affairs, as Shaolin and Wudong would not remain passive. Some time later, Seowa informed Mujin of these developments. After hearing everything, Mujin understood that the Unorthodox Alliance had made a direct move. Seowa described the current situation as the calm before the storm, with various sects and clans watching each other closely. Divisions had already formed within the Murim Alliance, especially after the Sichuan Tang clan sided with Mujin. Several sects, including Qingqing, Amei, Manhwa, and the Jaegao clan, openly criticized this stance, while the Unorthodox Alliance continued to apply pressure. Gawain observed that the orthodox side appeared divided and that anti-Shaolin forces might unite. Seowa confirmed his assessment. Mujin realized that their identities had finally been exposed, leading to the current fragmentation of factions. Gawain suggested reaching out to the Zhongnan sect as a starting point for building alliances. He explained that the anti-Shaolin faction would attempt to isolate any opposing forces, but since the Zhongnan sect was already in conflict with the Manhwa sect, they would have reason to cooperate. Mujin, recalling events from the original storyline, knew that the Zhongnan sect could be manipulated through the DGM Merchant Guild. He decided they should intervene before that could happen. He then asked Seowa to investigate the Mansang sect in Shaanxi province, mentioning a confidential document that suggested the existence of a copied Zhongnan sword manual, one that detailed both the sect's techniques and their weaknesses. He warned that New Heavens would likely use this opportunity to target factions outside the anti-Shaolin group. Gawain acknowledged that the Zhongnan sect could be drawn into the conflict. Seowa agreed to handle the matter carefully. Mujin felt that this plan could stabilize the immediate situation. Working alongside capable allies reassured him, and he resolved to address smaller details step by step. As his body steadily recovered, he became determined to rebuild his lost strength quickly. He knew that returning to Shaolin in a weakened state would confine him there for years, so he intended to make the most of his time before going back. 2 months later, Mujin and his group had fully recovered. Although Mujin expressed a desire to continue training, he acknowledged that they could not delay their departure any longer. Siowa reported that the Zhongnan sect situation appeared manageable. She also mentioned that she would inform him as soon as a letter arrived from Lady Jagal-Jihe, noting that if Mujin's suspicions were correct, even the Jagal clan would not remain safe from New Heavens. Mujin expressed his gratitude and emphasized the importance of securing allies whenever possible. When asked about his next destination, Mujin revealed that he intended to resolve the final matter that had driven him to leave Shaolin in the first place. Their destination was Gujiang County in Hunan Province, where the Heavenly Flash sect was located. The scene then shifted to the Heavenly Flash sect, where the young sect leader, Du Wulchen, muttered in confusion, wondering if someone had called out to him. A place known for its calm and gentle atmosphere, where a soft breeze carried a sense of peace, such was Gujiang County in Hunan. Although it lacked any renowned or prestigious Murim clans, it was home to numerous small sects and families. Within this quiet region, a legend persisted. On the day the code of the Jianghu collapsed, the greatest martial master under heaven would awaken in Gujiang County, restore justice to the Murim, and bring peace once more. The scene shifted to the outer training grounds of the Hunan Heavenly Flash sect, where the young sect leader, Du Wulchen, stood in position. Drawing a deep breath, he closed his eyes and concentrated. As he activated his technique, Quick Sword, Single Flash, his blade moved in a blur, slicing through several wooden dummies in an instant. After completing the motion, he sheathed his weapon and quietly wondered if things would truly unfold as he had been told. His thoughts drifted back to the day of the Dragon Phoenix Summit. On that day, he had encountered a benefactor, the blessed monk Mujin, who had given him a lesser revitalization pill. Along with it came instructions on how to properly circulate his energy, which had elevated his martial abilities to a new level. More importantly, Mujin had advised him to abandon the sword in favor of a blade. Since then, the flow of his energy had become far more natural, as though he had wielded a blade his entire life. Wulchen could not help but recognize Mujin as an extraordinary individual, someone capable of perceiving another person's fate. Yet, that very realization only deepened his unease. Mujin had warned him that within a year, a great threat would descend upon the Heavenly Flash sect. He had urged Wulchen to prepare and to pursue the extreme, stating that if he could bring a single technique to absolute mastery, he alone could prevent the sect's impending tragedy. Taking those words to heart, Wulchen had devoted himself entirely to training after returning from the summit, refining the first form of Quick Sword to its utmost limit. Even so, doubt lingered in his mind as he questioned whether he could truly protect his clan. At that moment, his attention was drawn to smoke rising in the distance. Recognizing the direction, his expression hardened as he realized it was coming from the clan estate. By the time he arrived, flames had already engulfed part of the compound. A clan member shouted urgently that the annex was on fire and needed to be extinguished before it spread to the main residence. The sect leader, Du Jaiwan, stared in shock and demanded to know what had happened so suddenly. One of his subordinates reported that everyone had been gathered according to his orders. Jaiwan immediately commanded them to prevent the fire from spreading and pressed for information regarding its cause. The response confirmed his fears. It had been deliberately set. Anger flared within him as he ordered the culprit to be found and punished without exception. At that very moment, a large group clad in black appeared. Their leader mockingly responded to Jaiwan's threat, belittling him and his authority. Jaiwan's subordinate demanded that they reveal their identities, but the leader instead issued a cold command: eliminate everyone and secure the target. Without hesitation, the attackers surged forward. Jaiwan shouted for his people to form ranks and prepare for battle, but the clash began instantly. One attacker appeared before him in a flash and struck. Jaiwan attempted to block, but his sword shattered under the force, and the enemy's blade cut into his shoulder, drawing blood. Gritting his teeth, Jaiwan struggled to endure the pain as his subordinate urged him to retreat. Before he could do so, another strike descended upon him. However, before the fatal blow could land, Du Wulchen intervened. In a single, fluid motion, he decapitated the attacker using the first form of the Heavenly Flash blade art. Continuing the same movement, he unleashed Quick Sword, Single Flash, cutting down another enemy instantly. Relief flickered across Jaiwan's face as he acknowledged his son's arrival. Seeing the fallen bodies of his sect members scattered across the ground, Wulchen instructed his father to find his mother and Wul, declaring that he would handle the situation. Around them, the black-clad attackers continued their relentless slaughter. Realizing the truth, Wulchen understood that these were the very threat Mujin had warned him about. With anger rising, he shouted at the invaders and charged forward, cutting them down one after another. Observing him, the enemy leader noted that no such individual had been mentioned in their intelligence. He immediately ordered reinforcements, including reserves and scouts, intending to wear Wulchen down before killing him. As time passed, the battle continued without pause. Eventually, Wulchen found himself surrounded by numerous enemies, his body growing weary from constant combat. Despite his exhaustion, his mind remained sharp. He recognized that each opponent was a highly skilled martial artist, far beyond what his sect's disciples could handle. He realized that without Mujin's prior help, he would have already fallen. Yet, the reason behind their attack remained unclear. Pushing aside all doubts, he resolved to stop them at any cost, even if it meant his own death. Gathering his remaining strength, he charged once more, meeting the incoming attacks from all directions. Then, without warning, a massive explosion erupted, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The source of the blast soon revealed itself. Mujin had arrived. He remarked that he had nearly been too late and greeted Wulchen, stating that he had come to help. Upon seeing him, Wulchen's tense expression finally softened into a faint smile, reassured by his presence. Sometimes later, as the battle continued between the attackers who had come to assault the Heavenly Flash sect, the bodies of New Heaven's members lay scattered across the ground. Their leader, though struggling, managed to block Wulchen's quick sword single flash technique with difficulty. At that moment, Mujin rushed forward at full speed, gathering energy into his fist before unleashing his technique, Fist Energy Magnum, causing a massive explosion. As the dust settled, Mujin let out a quiet sigh and remarked that Wulchen had grown much stronger than before. Wulchen's expression darkened, and he remained silent for a moment before admitting that he would not have been able to hold them off alone if Mujin had not come to help. Just then, a little girl rushed forward, leaping into Wulchen's arms as she exclaimed that he was safe. Wulchen, relieved, recognized her as Wu Liang and expressed his gratitude that she was unharmed. Shortly after, Magum arrived alongside the Heavenly Flash sect leader, Du Jaiwen. Magum explained that the situation had unfolded just as Mujin had predicted. New Heavens had planned to strike the sect's core while everyone was scattered, and by the time he arrived, enemies had already infiltrated the area. Upon seeing his father, Wulchen immediately asked about the safety of the sect members. Jaiwen reassured him that, thanks to the timely arrival of Mujin and his group, no major losses had been suffered. He expressed his deep gratitude to Mujin and the Shaolin, declaring that the Heavenly Flash sect would never forget this debt. However, Mujin cautioned that the crisis was not yet over. Jaiwen, concerned, asked what he meant. Mujin explained that until New Heavens achieved their objective, they would continue attacking the Heavenly Flash sect. When Jaiwen asked what that objective was, Mujin revealed that they were after the sect's treasure, the Heavenly Flash Blade. He further explained that the mastermind organization behind the attacks was New Heavens, a shadowy force within Nurim that sowed chaos indiscriminately, regardless of whether a sect was orthodox or unorthodox. This time, their target was the Heavenly Flash sect. Sometime later, Jaiwen, Wulchen, and Mujin entered the clan's treasure chamber. As they stepped inside, Jaiwen questioned whether the attackers truly sought the Heavenly Flash Blade. Mujin confirmed this, explaining that the information had been obtained while eliminating New Heaven's forces. Upon seeing the wooden box at the center of the room, Mujin inquired if it contained the Heavenly Flash Blade. Jaiwen, though slightly uneasy, affirmed it and admitted that, in truth, the blade was nothing particularly remarkable. Opening the box, he revealed the sword and explained that it was merely a symbolic item, a simple piece of iron shaped like a blade, representing the teaching. Steel your heart as hard as steel and train yourself. He further added that such treasures were common among minor sects, and that there were likely many similar items within Guzhong County. Thus, he questioned why New Heavens would target it. In response, Mujin stated that he would explain and presented a fragment of cloth. When Jaiwen asked what it was, Mujin revealed that it was a piece of dragon-scale armor, originally crafted entirely from 10,000-year-old cold iron. Jaiwen was stunned upon hearing this, unable to hide his shock. Wulchen, confused, asked why his father reacted so strongly. Jaiwen explained that if the material was truly 10,000-year-old cold iron, even a small fragment could sustain their clan comfortably for years. Mujin then politely took the sword from Jaiwen and handed it to Wulchen, instructing him to hold it in place. After stepping back and assuming an attack stance, Mujin declared that he would now demonstrate why the blade was being targeted. As Wulchen nervously questioned his intentions, Mujin unleashed a combined technique, Iron Guard and Arhat Palm Strike, shattering the outer layer of rough iron surrounding the blade. He then revealed that the crude exterior was merely a disguise, concealing the weapon's true form, a black blade forged from 10,000-year-old cold iron, capable of withstanding even the most powerful sword energy. Jaiwan was left in utter disbelief, questioning how even he, as sect leader, had been unaware of the blade's true nature and how their ancestors had hidden such a treasure so perfectly. Mujin then asked if Jaiwan knew the legend of Guzheng County, the prophecy that when the code of Jianghu falls, the greatest martial master under heaven would awaken there to restore justice to Mirim. Jaiwan acknowledged the legend but dismissed it as a mere children's tale. However, Mujin confirmed that it was true, revealing that the Heavenly Flash sect was the very subject of that legend, and the Heavenly Flash blade was the provision left behind by their ancestors to protect Mirim in times of chaos. He explained that the current attacks by New Heavens proved that they, too, believed the blade posed a significant threat to their future. Turning to Wulchen, Mujin reminded him of what he had said before, that through following the Buddhist path, he had gained a limited ability to read fate. Internally, Mujin admitted that this knowledge partly came from what he had read in the original story. He went on to explain that, although he had managed to change many fates and save numerous lives, his strength was still insufficient to completely sever the chains of fate bound by evil. The recent attack was proof that New Heavens could strike anywhere at any time, and he could not allow more innocent people to suffer. Therefore, he asked Wulchen to fight alongside him against New Heavens and help save those in hardship, emphasizing that they needed the power of the protagonist. Wulchen fell into deep thought. He recognized Mujin as someone who had defeated Namgung Jinshin, won the Dragon Phoenix Summit, and saved the Heavenly Flash sect. Yet, he still felt weak in comparison. After a moment of contemplation, Wulchen respectfully apologized and stated that he wished to give his answer only after he had confirmed his own strength. He then requested a duel to prove himself. Mujin smiled and agreed to spar with Wulchen without hesitation. Sometime later, at the arena, Mujin and Wulchen stood face to face while others gathered around to witness the duel. As Wulchen prepared himself, he reflected on how he had once believed he understood Mujin's strength after seeing him at the Dragon Phoenix Summit. Now, standing before him, he realized how gravely mistaken he had been. Mujin's aura felt like an overwhelming mountain, making him question whether he could even stand as his opponent. However, he quickly cast aside those doubts, resolving that if he wished to stand alongside Mujin, he had to prove himself. With that determination, he took his fighting stance. Observing his expression, Mujin recognized Wulchen's resolve and thought that he could not afford to disappoint him either. In the next instant, Mujin raised his arm, leaped forward, and launched a fist toward Wulchen. Wulchen immediately raised his blade to block the strike, and their energies collided violently. As the clash continued, Mujin realized the blade's extraordinary durability, acknowledging that it truly lived up to the reputation of 10,000-year-old cold iron. Wulchen then pushed Mujin back, and both quickly reset into their stances. Without hesitation, Mujin gathered fist energy while Wulchen employed swift sword, and the two rushed toward each other once again. Wulchen initiated the attack with a cross slash, but Mujin countered with a series of consecutive strikes, deflecting each blow. Watching the exchange, Muyul exclaimed in excitement at their incredible speed, while Mu Kyung, standing beside him, quietly noted that Mujin seemed slightly faster. Mujin followed up with a rapid kick. Wulchen noticed the attack and raised his sword to block, but the sheer force pushed him backward. Creating distance, Wulchen realized this was his opportunity. He thought that at this range, he could attempt the Heavenly Flash Sect's secret technique, even if he had not yet fully mastered it. Gathering his energy, he prepared to unleash the Heavenly Flash Blade Art third form. However, at that very moment, Mujin leaped into the air and descended toward him. Wulchen looked up nervously as Mujin unleashed a combined technique, Chain Punch and Arhat Palm Strike, slamming downward and triggering a massive explosion. As the dust cleared, Wulchen was seen kneeling on the ground, exhausted and coughing. He realized that Mujin's attack had been perfectly timed, striking at the precise moment he was gathering energy. The overwhelming combination of speed, power, and technique made it clear that he could not match him. For a moment, he believed it had been impossible from the start. Seeing his dejected expression, Mujin called out to him, reminding him of the words he had spoken at the Dragon Phoenix Summit. Wulchen recalled those words, about pursuing the ultimate in a single discipline and mastering one technique perfectly to prevent tragedy. As he reflected on this, he came to a realization. It was not about mastering numerous powerful techniques or achieving the fastest speed, but about perfecting a single technique. Mu Kyung, observing him closely, noticed that something about Wulchen's aura had changed. Closing his eyes, Wulchen lowered his stance and focused on the most basic martial art of the Heavenly Flash sect, a technique he had practiced countless times since childhood. Seeing this, Mujin smiled faintly. Within moments, Wulchen gathered his energy, focusing entirely on the Heavenly Flash sword art, first form, swift sword. As energy surged through his body, Mu Kyung grew tense, noticing the blade's altered presence. He warned everyone to be ready to protect the spectators, sensing something ominous in Wulchen's aura. Both Mu Kyung and Mugung immediately assumed defensive stances to safeguard those watching the duel. Meanwhile, Mujin observed Wulchen's transformation and reflected that, although it had been a reckless gamble, he had believed Wulchen could achieve this. After all, regardless of his current state, Wulchen was the protagonist of Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles. He recalled Wulchen's past, how he had once been regarded as the strongest unorthodox martial artist and the greatest bladesman under heaven despite possessing little innate talent. A great tragedy had struck him with the destruction of his sect, and through years of relentless training and life-or-death battles, he had eventually unlocked the true power of the Heavenly Flash Blade. Mujin realized that, although he had offered guidance, Wulchen had drastically shortened that long journey of growth. It was precisely what one would expect from the protagonist. With that understanding, Mujin assumed a defensive stance as Wulchen charged forward. Watching him approach, Mujin smiled, recognizing what was coming. In the next instant, a blade of light surged forward, an unavoidable, ultra-fast strike. It was the ultimate technique of Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, the true Heavenly Single Flash. As the attack struck, a massive cloud of dust engulfed the arena, obscuring everyone's vision. The onlookers murmured in confusion, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. As the dust gradually settled, a shocking sight was revealed. Blood dripped from Mujin's hand as he stood firm, having stopped Wulchen's true Heavenly Single Flash with his bare hands. Wulchen himself was stunned by the sheer power of his own technique, and questioned what had just happened. Mujin calmly explained that what Wulchen had just unleashed was the true secret art of the Heavenly Flash Blade, the true Heavenly Single Flash. Wulchen was left in disbelief upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Mujin reflected inwardly, recognizing the technique as the strongest in Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles. It was a skill born from pushing the sect's most fundamental martial art, Single Flash, to its absolute limit and mastering its ultimate essence while walking the true path of the Heavenly Flash sect. Breaking the silence, Mujin told Wulchen that he could now cast aside any doubts about himself. All the countless hours of training and effort had been acknowledged by the Heavenly Flash Blade. Wulchen looked down at the weapon in his hand, realizing that it had truly acknowledged him. Mujin then extended his hand toward him, urging him to believe in himself and to join the fight against the forces of evil as the protagonist. Deeply moved, Wulchen acknowledged Mujin as an extraordinary person. Though he admitted his own inadequacy, he expressed his willingness to fight alongside him. The two then sealed their resolve with a handshake. Later, after discussing the situation with the Heavenly Flash sect leader and the others, a decision was made to relocate the sect's base to Dengfeng County, where Shaolin was located. Since New Heavens would not cease their attacks, relocating there would allow them to better anticipate and prevent future assaults. Before departing, they conducted funeral rites for the fallen members of the sect, lighting their bodies in a solemn farewell. Wulchen vowed that once everything was resolved, he would return to properly pay his respects, asking forgiveness for leaving in such a manner, and wishing the departed peace. As he spoke, a messenger approached Mujin and informed him that an urgent letter had arrived. Mujin, surprised, asked who it was from. The messenger explained that it came from the Heavenly Merchant Guild and handed it over. Upon hearing this, Mujin expressed his gratitude and immediately opened the letter. As he read, he recalled asking Lady Sealwa to contact him if anything urgent arose, but he had not expected such news so suddenly. His expression quickly turned serious. At that moment, Ma Gung and the others approached, informing him that preparations were complete and they were ready to depart. However, Mujin halted them, apologizing as he stated that they would have to delay their journey to Dangfeng County. Ma Gung questioned him, while Muyo asked if something had happened again. Turning toward them, Mujin revealed the grim truth: the Jaegao clan had fallen. The scene then shifted back in time to when Mujin's group was preparing to confront the Wolf King. In Hubei province, within the Jaegao clan, chaos and bloodshed had erupted. A fierce battle raged between the branch clan and the main clan, with many main clan members falling. One such warrior, clad in dark blue, struggled to block an attack from a branch clan member dressed in light purple. In shock, he demanded to know why fellow clan members were attacking each other. The branch clan member, wearing a sinister smile, mocked him, pointing out the years of discrimination they had endured as a branch clan and rejecting the idea that they were ever treated as equals. As the pressure of the attack intensified, the main clan member realized he could not withstand the overwhelming force. He was bewildered, as such martial arts were unknown within their clan. In the next moment, his blade shattered, and he was cut down, his lifeless body collapsing to the ground. The attacker laughed maniacally, reveling in the fact that he had defeated a main clan warrior, crediting the martial art bestowed upon him by the elder as the real power. He then shouted for the others to demonstrate their strength against the main clan. Elsewhere, Ji-hee hurried through the forest with her subordinates, urging them to regroup with the main forces before it was too late. She anxiously inquired about her father and brothers. Her subordinate informed her that the clan head had evacuated, but the status of the young masters remained unknown. Ji-hee cursed under her breath, realizing that Mujin's earlier warning had come true. Elder Jaegao Hyan had indeed initiated a rebellion. She recalled their conversation at the Dragon Phoenix Summit, when Mujin had asked if anything unusual had been happening within the Jaegao clan. At the time, she had dismissed the idea, unaware of any strange occurrences. However, Mujin had insisted on informing her of something he had discovered in Nanchang and handed her a letter. Upon reading it, she had been shocked to find records that appeared to be a human trafficking ledger, bearing Jaegao Hyan's name. She had resolved to investigate it upon returning. Mujin had cautioned her that the matter might be far more than a simple trafficking case and urged her to proceed carefully. Now, reflecting on everything, Ji-hee realized that the rebellion was connected to that discovery, and that such a large-scale uprising could not have occurred without a powerful force behind it. At that moment, a man dressed in black appeared before her group, casually asking where they were heading in such haste. Jin-hee's group halted immediately, and one of her subordinates demanded to know his identity, and why he dared to block the Jaegao clan's path. The man responded with a mocking tone, belittling their reliance on their clan name, and declaring that the reputation of the orthodox sect's 5 great clans had fallen. Jin-hee, recognizing the danger, drew her battle fan and assumed a combat stance. She deduced that he was not a member of their clan and that his presence at such a critical moment indicated he was the one manipulating Jaegao Hyan. The man chuckled, questioning her reasoning. Ji-hee firmly stated that a rebellion of such magnitude could not have been orchestrated by a mere elder, insisting that a greater faction must be using Jaegao Hyan as a puppet, and demanded that he reveal his identity. The man laughed maniacally, acknowledging her sharpness but declaring that she was too dangerous to be left alive, despite Jaegao Hyan's desire to capture her. Drawing his blade, he declared his intent to sever her noble bloodline. Immediately, Jin-hee and her group charged forward to confront him. Meanwhile, in the present, Mujin read Sealwa's letter aloud. It detailed how the branch clan's rebellion, led by Jaegao Hyan, had ended in victory. Although the patriarch Jaegao Gung remained safe, the whereabouts of other direct bloodline members were unknown. Jaegao Hyan had seized full control of the clan and formed an alliance with Manhwa, Ame, and Qingqing, creating the so-called Anti-Shaolin Alliance. The letter warned that Hubei province was effectively under their control and ended with a wish for Mujin's safe return. After finishing the letter, Mujin turned to his companions and declared that it was time to begin the Jaegao clan rescue operation. The scene shifted to Hubei province's Enchi Grand Canyon, where Mujin and his companions were making their way through a dense forest. As they traveled, Mujin recalled the advice Baek Gowon had given him earlier. Gowon had theorized that there had to be a safe house somewhere nearby. A clan as large and prestigious as the Jaegao clan would undoubtedly have prepared a contingency plan for a crisis of this magnitude. At the time, Mujin had found the idea convincing. The Tang clan had possessed similar emergency shelters, so it was only natural that the Jaegao clan would have done the same. Gaowen had further explained that information regarding such safe houses was usually restricted to a small number of trusted members within the main clan. Since the rebellion was being led by the branch clan, it was highly likely that they were unaware of the safe house's existence. As a result, the chances of successfully rescuing the main clan members were quite high. As it turned out, Beck Gaowen's prediction had been accurate. Shortly after arriving in Hubei province, Mujin's group had been attacked by a suspicious force. After capturing one of the branch clan members, they learned that the rebels had been searching for the main clan survivors hidden somewhere within Enshi Grand Canyon. The captive had openly declared that the rebellion was not treason but divine punishment inflicted upon those who had suffered discrimination for generations simply because they belonged to the branch clan. He praised Elder Jaegao Hyan, claiming that unlike the main clan, he had bestowed divine arts upon them. Before he could say anything further, a sword suddenly pierced through his chest. The captive died instantly. Mujin and his companions turned in shock, only to discover that one of the New Heavens operatives accompanying the rebels had thrown the sword. The man coldly dismissed the dead rebel as worthless trash who could neither fight properly nor accomplish anything useful. Realizing the involvement of New Heavens, Mujin immediately rushed forward. Concentrating energy into his fist, he unleashed a powerful strike that exploded outward with tremendous force. The impact was so great that it could be seen from a distance. The New Heavens operative was killed instantly. As the dust settled, Mujin concluded that New Heavens had already infiltrated the area ahead of them. Later that evening, the group continued their journey through the canyon in search of the Jaegao clan's safe house. After walking for a long time, Mugung began to question whether they were still following the correct path. Mujin admitted that he could not be completely certain, but he trusted Lingling, the enchanted beast guiding them. Thanks to Lingling's assistance, they had even managed to ambush several New Heavens operatives without difficulty. In response, Lingling proudly raised a thumb toward Mujin. The gesture left Mujin both amused and bewildered. Despite spending considerable time around the creature, he still had no idea how Lingling managed to understand human conversation so well. A short while later, Lingling suddenly became alert. It turned toward Muyul and began communicating through a series of gestures and sounds. After listening carefully, Muyul informed the group that Lingling sensed something unusual. According to the beast, the surrounding area smelled and sounded far too clean. Neither Mujin nor Mugung understood what that meant at first. However, Muyul explained that a normal forest was filled with countless scents and noises from animals, insects, and plants. This particular area felt unnaturally silent and sterile. The observation immediately sparked suspicion in Mujin's mind. If the sounds and smells were being hidden, then someone might be deliberately concealing the area. Considering the Jaegao clan's reputation for enchantments and traps, the possibility seemed highly likely. To test his theory, Mujin picked up a stone and threw it into the forest. Moments later, the stone suddenly returned. Not only did it come back, but it traveled several times faster than before. Reacting instantly, Mujin raised his arm and activated Iron Guard, successfully blocking the projectile. The phenomenon confirmed his suspicions. The area was under the influence of an enchantment capable of distorting perception and manipulating space into a maze-like structure. After examining the situation, Mujin confidently announced that they had found an enchantment. Wulchen expressed surprise, but Mujin explained that the Jaegao clan was famous for its mastery of enchantments. Combined with Lingling's observations and the behavior of the stone, the evidence strongly suggested that they had finally discovered the correct route. However, as he continued speaking, another realization struck him. If the enchantment surrounded the area, then they were likely already inside it. The warning came too late. Several armed figures suddenly emerged from all directions and launched an ambush. Completely surrounded, Mujin and Wulchen prepared for battle. The attackers swung their weapons simultaneously, yet their strikes were effortlessly blocked. After pushing the attackers backward, Mujin quickly analyzed the situation. Even with his highly developed senses, he had failed to detect their presence until the last moment. The enchantment had concealed them perfectly. The attackers, who turned out to be Jaegal clan main clan warriors, were equally shocked. They had never expected outsiders to reach such a heavily protected location. Accusing Mujin's group of using an enchanted beast to cheat their way through the defenses, they prepared to continue fighting. Mujin attempted to explain that they had come to help, but the warriors refused to listen. Traumatized by the rebellion and desperate to protect their remaining sanctuary, they believed every outsider to be an enemy. As the standoff escalated, Mujin realized how difficult the situation had become. The group had finally reached their destination, yet fear and distrust made communication nearly impossible. Just as he began considering a non-lethal method of subduing them, a familiar voice suddenly called out for everyone to stop. The voice immediately caught Mujin's attention. It belonged to Jinhee. Recognizing him despite his disguise, she asked if he was truly Monk Mujin. The surrounding warriors were stunned. The name alone was enough to cause a stir. They quickly realized that the mysterious black-robed figure standing before them was none other than the famed blessed monk of Shaolin, the divine dragon who had defeated Namgung Jinshin during the previous Dragon Phoenix Summit. Unable to believe her eyes, Jinhee questioned how Mujin had managed to find them. In response, Mujin removed the cloth covering his face and revealed his identity. Relieved to see that Jinhee was unharmed, he explained that he and his companions had come to rescue the Jaegal clan before it was too late. The tension immediately disappeared from Jinhee's face. Overcome with relief and gratitude, she sincerely thanked Mujin for coming to help them in their darkest hour. The scene shifted to the Jaegal clan's territory in Hubei province. Inside one of the clan buildings, Jaegal Hyan smashed a glass onto the floor in a fit of rage. His frustration boiled over as he berated his subordinates for their continued failure to locate the remnants of the main clan. Despite receiving repeated orders, they still had not discovered where their targets were hiding. One of the subordinates hurriedly assured him that all available personnel would be deployed to Enshi Grand Canyon immediately. However, Jaegal Hyan was in no mood to listen. He angrily ordered the man to leave and not return until he had found the main clan's hiding place. The subordinate quickly departed, leaving the room in silence. Grinding his teeth, Jaegal Hyan muttered that every one of his followers was useless. At that moment, Yom Dokil, dressed in black, approached him. Calmly observing the outburst, he remarked that Jaegal Hyan was being excessively harsh on his own people. In his view, no one could truly respect or follow a leader who ruled solely through anger. Nevertheless, he admitted that it was remarkable that a new Jaegal clan composed entirely of branch clan members had emerged. Jaegal Hyan dismissed the branch clan members as fools blinded by petty gains. He then complained that the situation would have been much easier if Dokil had not allowed Jaegal Jinhee to escape earlier. Dokil narrowed his eyes and asked what he meant. Immediately realizing his mistake, Hyan awkwardly brushed the comment aside and claimed it was nothing. Dokil changed the subject and voiced a question that had long puzzled him. If Jaegal Hyan intended to eradicate the main clan entirely, why had he specifically ordered Jinhee to be captured alive? From Dokil's perspective, she seemed like nothing more than a future threat. Hyan chuckled before revealing his true intentions. He explained that although the branch clan elders currently supported him, their loyalty would not last forever. Sooner or later, they would challenge his authority and attempt to seize his position. Since he himself came from the branch clan, they would naturally believe they had the same right to rule. When Dokil asked what that had to do with Jinhee, Hyan proudly unveiled his plan. He intended to capture Jaegal Jinhee and force her into a marriage alliance. By marrying a direct descendant of the main clan, he would gain unquestionable legitimacy and become the sole recognized heir of the Jaegal clan. In his mind, the plan was flawless. Listening to the explanation, Dokil silently concluded that everyone involved was blinded by selfish desires. Meanwhile, deep within Enshi Grand Canyon, Mujin informed Jinhee and the others about everything he had learned regarding New Heavens and Jaegal Hyan's rebellion. After hearing the explanation, Jinhee realized that Jaegal Hyan was merely a puppet being manipulated by an organization known as New Heavens. Mujin confirmed her suspicion and explained that the forces who had attacked her group were undoubtedly connected to the same organization. The revelation filled Jinhee with anger. She could not understand why anyone would commit such barbaric acts. As the discussion continued, Mujin reflected on the events of the original story. At last, he believed he understood why Ji-hee had never appeared in the original narrative. She had likely resisted the rebellion and met a tragic fate before she ever had the opportunity to play a significant role. In that timeline, the Jaegao clan had become nothing more than a tool of New Heavens, spreading chaos throughout the Murim before eventually being annihilated by the awakened Du Wulchen. Their destruction had left countless victims and tragedies behind. Now that history had a chance to change. However, a major obstacle remained. Even if New Heavens and Jaegao Hyan were defeated, the bitterness between the main clan and branch clan ran far deeper than he had expected. As long as that resentment remained unresolved, the Jaegao clan could never truly be restored. Seeking another clue, Mujin turned to Ji-hee and asked whether she had seen any branch clan members using martial arts unfamiliar to the Jaegao clan. To his surprise, Ji-hee immediately confirmed it. Not long ago, the rebels had attacked using techniques she had never seen before. Mujin explained that he had heard reports of Jaegao Hyan distributing so-called divine arts among his followers. Understanding what he was implying, Ji-hee ordered one of her subordinates to retrieve an item she had confiscated from the attackers. A short time later, she presented a martial arts manual to Mujin. The manual contained a technique known as the Moonlight Fan Dance. According to Ji-hee, it was far too sophisticated to be considered an ordinary martial art. It resembled a divine art far more than a traditional clan technique. Mujin agreed that it likely came from New Heavens, but he doubted they would distribute such a valuable technique without hidden motives. When Ji-hee asked whether he suspected a deeper scheme, Mujin answered that they needed to investigate further. The problem, however, was that analyzing a martial arts manual required specialized expertise, and the Jaegao clan currently lacked anyone capable of performing such an examination. Fortunately, Mujin knew exactly who could help. A short while later, he handed the manual to Mu-kyung and asked him to investigate it. Caught off guard, Mu-kyung wondered why he had suddenly been given such a task. Mujin explained that the technique felt suspicious and unlike any normal martial art. He wanted to know whether there was anything hidden within it. Though slightly reluctant, Mu-kyung agreed to examine the manual. Ji-hee watched the exchange with amazement. The idea that someone so young could analyze an advanced martial arts manual was difficult to believe. Mujin casually remarked that such a task was easy for Mu-kyung and jokingly referred to him as a martial arts fanatic. The comment immediately irritated Mu-kyung. An argument followed as Mu-kyung demanded to know how being called a freak could possibly be considered praise, while Mujin insisted that he had meant it as a compliment. Watching the interaction, Ji-hee found herself once again impressed by the people surrounding Mujin. Every one of them was extraordinary. Mu-kyung possessed astonishing analytical talent. Wulchen had effortlessly blocked the combined assault of numerous Jaegao warriors. Muyu could communicate with an enchanted beast capable of detecting hidden enchantments. Even the enormous Mogung possessed overwhelming strength. The more she observed them, the more unbelievable they seemed. It was no wonder that Mujin, the famed divine monk of Shaolin, was constantly surrounded by remarkable individuals. Before she could dwell on the matter any longer, the group suddenly found themselves standing in front of a building. Mujin and his companions were stunned. Only moments earlier they had been walking through a forest, yet somehow they had arrived inside a hidden structure without realizing it. Ji-hee explained that the phenomenon was the result of an enchantment created by her father. Having traveled through it countless times, she was accustomed to its effects. Mujin could only admire the craftsmanship behind such a powerful enchantment. It truly demonstrated why the Jaegao clan was renowned throughout the Murim. Meanwhile, Ji-hee found herself thinking strange thoughts. The situation felt oddly similar to the formal marriage meetings she had only heard stories about. Suppressing her embarrassment, she approached the door and knocked. She informed her father that she had brought guests from Shaolin who had come to aid the Jaegao clan. When the door opened, two figures were waiting inside. One was Manhwa, Jin-hee's mother. The other was Jaegao Gung, the second son of the former clan head, the current interim leader of the Jaegao clan, and Jin-hee's father. As Mujin listened to the situation surrounding the Jaegao clan, he recalled the events described in the original work, Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles. According to the story, the decline of the Jaegao clan, one of the Central Plains' 5 great clans, had begun 5 years earlier with the sudden death of clan head Jaegao Mun. Because no successor had been properly prepared to inherit the position, fierce succession disputes erupted among the heirs. The resulting internal conflict gradually consumed the clan from within, and New Heavens ultimately took advantage of the chaos to bring about the clan's complete downfall. Earlier that day, before Ji-hee and the others had arrived, Jae-gal-gung had been discussing the situation with his wife, Ja-miwa. Frustrated and burdened by guilt, Jae-gal-gung slammed his fist against the table. He lamented that only a handful of direct descendants who had managed to escape were still safe. He never imagined that the resentment harbored by the branch clan had grown so deep. Looking back, he blamed himself for focusing too much on the succession struggle, while neglecting the growing tensions within the clan. Ja-miwa attempted to comfort him, assuring him that no one could have predicted that the branch clan would seize the opportunity to launch a rebellion. Even so, Jae-gal-gung could not suppress his regret. He muttered that perhaps things would have been different if they had taken the warnings Ji-hee brought back more seriously. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. A servant respectfully informed them that the young lady had returned and brought guests with her. Both Jae-gal-gung and Ja-miwa were immediately puzzled. In the present, Mujin respectfully introduced himself to the interim clan head. Jae-gal-gung greeted him warmly, explaining that he had long been aware of the blessed monk's reputation throughout the Murim. Although pleased by the visit, Jae-gal-gung apologized for being unable to properly host his guests under the current circumstances. He then questioned the purpose of their visit and advised them to leave while they still could, as the Jae-gal clan's situation was extremely dangerous. Mujin calmly rejected the suggestion. Shaolin, he explained, never abandoned those who had aided them. Furthermore, the situation was not yet hopeless. There was still a way to turn everything around. Intrigued, Jae-gal-gung asked what that solution might be. Mujin answered that the key was to shatter the enemy's unity. Jae-gal-gung remained skeptical. The rebels appeared united by a single objective, the destruction of both the direct lineage and the main clan. Rather than argue, Mujin turned to Mu-kyung and asked whether he had finished analyzing the martial arts manual. Mu-kyung replied that the most important parts of the investigation were already complete. The moment Jae-gal-gung saw the manual, he immediately recognized it as the martial arts text distributed by Jae-gal-hyan. Mu-kyung then revealed his findings. According to his analysis, the Moonlight Fan Dance Manual was not a divine technique at all. In reality, it was closer to a curse. The technique appeared to strengthen martial prowess by circulating energy through the Baihui occupant. However, the process was incredibly destructive. Although short-term use caused little harm, repeated practice slowly damaged the body over time, much like a rope being worn down by countless years of storms. The deterioration occurred gradually and often went unnoticed by the practitioner. Normally, the damage could be mitigated by nourishing the body with yin energy to cool the meridians. However, that critical information had been deliberately omitted from the manual. To Mu-kyung, it was obvious that the side effects were intentional. Jin-hee could only stare in amazement. Mu-kyung had spent less than an hour examining the manual, yet he had already uncovered its fundamental secret. Meanwhile, Jae-gal-gung was horrified by the revelation. When he demanded to know what those side effects entailed, Mu-kyung explained that continued deterioration of the Baihui acupoint would gradually erode a person's rationality. Over time, the practitioner would become increasingly violent and unstable before ultimately descending into madness. The explanation left Ja-miwa confused. If the manual was so dangerous, what could Jae-gal-hyan's true objective have been? Surely he wished to inherit the prestigious Jae-gal clan rather than destroy it. Mujin provided the answer. The manuals had never truly come from Jae-gal-hyan. They were distributed by New Heavens, the shadowy organization manipulating him from behind the scenes. Their goal was not merely to spark rebellion but to completely destroy the Jae-gal clan once it had outlived its usefulness. Everything suddenly became clear. New Heavens intended to rot the clan from within and then use its remnants as a weapon to spread chaos throughout the Murim. Jae-gal-gung immediately connected this revelation to the many rumors that had circulated about Mujin and his companions. Reports had claimed that they wandered the Central Plains causing unrest, and even committing crimes attributed to the Green Forest Bandits. Mujin confirmed that all of those accusations had been fabrications created by New Heavens. At last, Jae-gal-gung understood the situation. The true objective was not to sever Jagal Hyan's relationship with the branch clan but rather to expose new heavens and drive a wedge between them and the rebels. Mujin confirmed that this was exactly his plan. Watching the discussion unfold, Mu Kyung could not help but think that Mujin had an exceptional talent for persuading people. Although Jagal Gung admitted that exposing the truth might create divisions among the rebels, he remained uncertain whether they would actually believe such claims. Before the conversation could continue, the door suddenly burst open. A messenger rushed inside and urgently informed them that a large force of invaders had gathered at the entrance to the enchantment. The announcement immediately darkened the atmosphere. Jagal Gung quietly remarked that their hiding place had finally been exposed. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Mujin declared that there was no longer any time for hesitation. Only one course of action remained. Jagal Gung agreed. Apologizing for dragging them into the Jagal clan's troubles, he nevertheless made a solemn promise. If they managed to overcome the crisis and restore the clan, the Jagal clan would offer its full support to both Shaolin and Mujin in the future. Mujin accepted the pledge with gratitude. Having the cooperation of a clan renowned throughout the Murim for its strategic brilliance would be an invaluable asset. Internally, he felt a sense of accomplishment. Convincing the Jagal clan had been the first major hurdle, and it had been successfully overcome. Now only the next stage remained. His thoughts drifted back to a conversation that had taken place before he departed from Namchang. At the time, Baek Gowon had advised him to seek assistance from the Wudong sect. Based on the intelligence they had gathered, Gowon believed that something far greater than previous incidents was unfolding around the Jagal clan. His sister's analysis suggested that the clan was destined to become the primary stronghold of New Heavens. The enemy force deployed there appeared several times larger than anything they had encountered before. Furthermore, if a martial master on the level of the Wolf King were to appear unexpectedly, the internally fractured Jagal clan would be incapable of utilizing its full strength. For those reasons, Gowon believed victory would not come easily. Understanding the concern, Mujin concluded that additional allies would be necessary as a precaution. Chung Su agreed wholeheartedly, noting that they could not risk another disaster like the previous one. After a moment of thought, Mujin asked whether Chung Su would be able to handle such a mission. Traveling to Wudong and returning with reinforcements would not be easy. Chung Su confidently assured him that he would return with Wudong disciples no matter what. Trusting his companion, Mujin entrusted the task to him. Back in the present, the scene shifted to the peak of Wudong Mountain. There, Anhyo sat quietly in meditation as he cultivated. Suddenly, his eyes opened. A faint look of surprise crossed his face as he sensed a familiar presence approaching. "My grandson who left home has returned?" The scene shifted to the entrance of the enchantment, where a group of branch clan warriors had gathered. Their leader examined the hidden barrier before turning to a specialist and asking whether they had found the entrance to the enchantment. The man confidently confirmed that they had. The leader then demanded to know how long it would take to break through. After inspecting the formation, the specialist estimated that it would require approximately 15 minutes. The answer immediately displeased the leader. He ordered the enchantment to be broken within 5 minutes. The specialist turned pale and protested that such a feat was impossible. Before he could continue, the leader pressed a sword against his throat and coldly informed him that failure would cost him his life. Terrified, the man could only tremble. Moments later, the leader noticed cracks beginning to appear throughout the enchantment. Assuming the threat had motivated the specialist, he mockingly praised him for finally doing his job. However, the specialist was completely bewildered. He had not done anything at all. Before anyone could investigate further, the enchantment suddenly opened. A figure burst out from within. Mujin emerged from the barrier and immediately drove his fist into the specialist's body, sending him flying backward with tremendous force. Without pausing, he ordered his companions to advance. The branch clan leader instantly retreated, creating distance between himself and the newcomers. Watching them emerge from the enchantment, he inwardly mocked them for exposing themselves voluntarily. His thoughts were interrupted by a powerful presence descending from above. Mugong leaped high into the air and unleashed the Rulai Divine Palm Strike. The technique crashed into the ground with overwhelming force. The earth shattered beneath the impact, leaving behind a massive palm-shaped crater. Although the branch clan leader managed to defend himself, the shockwaves still injured him. Recognizing the technique, his eyes widened in alarm. Before he could finish processing the realization, Mujin suddenly appeared before him. Gathering energy around his fist, Mujin delivered a devastating blow to the man's stomach. The leader was launched through the air, groaning in agony as he crashed to the ground. Meanwhile, the rest of Mujin's group charged into battle. As the fighting intensified, Mujin called out to Muyul, signaling that it was time. Muyul immediately sprang into action. Moving through the battlefield with astonishing speed, he carefully targeted the branch clan warriors and rendered them unconscious one after another. Watching the battle unfold, Jaegal could not hide his astonishment. The coordination displayed by Shaolin's younger generation was extraordinary. Even amidst the chaos, they precisely distinguished branch clan members from New Heaven's operatives and incapacitated only the appropriate targets. Each of them possessed abilities surpassing those of seasoned second-generation disciples. Comparing them to the current state of the Jaegal clan's disciples filled Jaegal with bitterness. The succession struggle had weakened the clan far more than he had realized. Anger and regret surged within him. Charging into battle himself, he struck down several enemies while declaring that the situation was the result of his own failure to properly guide and protect the clan. The battle continued for some time before the final resistance was crushed. Mujin personally kicked a New Heaven's operative, sending him flying across the battlefield before crashing into the ground. With the fighting largely over, he checked on his companions. Mugong reported that all enemies had been successfully subdued. Muyul confirmed that the Jaegal clan members were unharmed as well. As silence gradually returned to the battlefield, Jaegal looked down at the captured branch clan warriors and wondered how the clan had fallen into such a state. At that moment, a voice echoed from a nearby hill. The speaker declared that everything had happened because the direct lineage had discriminated against the branch clans. Everyone immediately turned toward the source. Standing atop the hill was Jaegal Hyan. Looking down upon them, he declared that the current disaster was merely the karma accumulated by the direct descendants of the Jaegal clan. Jaegal angrily demanded to know whether Hyan truly believed he could escape punishment after betraying his own clan. Hyan remained unfazed. According to him, he had acted solely for the benefit of the clan. The people gathered around him desired a new Jaegal clan free from discrimination and oppression. Hearing such words only further enraged Jaegal. He acknowledged that the branch clan's grievances were real, but warned them that relying on outside forces would never bring true reform. Once those outsiders seized control, they would only create a new cycle of discrimination. He pleaded with them to consider whether that future was truly what they desired. Hyan dismissed the argument entirely. In his eyes, the direct lineage had monopolized the clan's secret arts for generations. Unlike them, he claimed to have shared his divine arts equally with everyone. Together with the branch clan elders, he intended to rebuild the Jaegal clan from the ground up. In response, Jaegal reached into his robe and produced the Moonlight Fan Dance Manual. Holding it high for all to see, he questioned whether this was the divine art Hyan had been boasting about. The moment he saw the manual, Hyan's expression darkened. He immediately demanded to know how they had obtained it. Ignoring the question, Jaegal addressed the gathered warriors. He revealed that the so-called divine art had actually been provided by an outside force. Far from being a blessing, it contained a hidden trap designed to slowly drive its users insane and ultimately destroy the Jaegal clan from within. The revelation spread through the crowd like wildfire. Many branch clan members began recalling strange symptoms they had experienced while practicing the technique. Some admitted that their minds occasionally went blank whenever they used it. Realizing the situation was slipping from his control, Hyan angrily dismissed the claims as desperate lies. At that moment, Mujin stepped forward. He calmly declared that they could personally guarantee the truth of Jaegal words. The appearance of Mujin and his companions caused another wave of shock among the branch clan members. Many immediately recognized him as the famous Shaolin divine monk and champion of the Dragon Phoenix Summit. Sensing their growing uncertainty, Hyan desperately attempted to regain control. He accused Jaegal of hypocrisy for bringing outsiders into clan affairs and reminded everyone of the rumors surrounding Shaolin's alleged crimes. However, Jaegal firmly countered that argument. Rather than harming them, Shaolin had traveled all the way to Hubei to help the Jaegal clan during its darkest hour. The branch clan warriors began exchanging uncertain glances. For the first time, their trust in Jaegal Hyan visibly wavered. Witnessing this, Hyan grew increasingly panicked. Turning toward Yom Dokyo, he demanded that the man reassure everyone that there was nothing wrong with the martial art. To his surprise, Dokyo ignored him completely. Instead, he calmly instructed one of his subordinates to notify the standby unit that the Shaolin group had appeared. The subordinate immediately acknowledged the order and departed. Completely confused, Hyan demanded an explanation. Before he could receive one, Dokyo moved. His sword flashed through the air. In a single instant, Jaegal Hyan's head separated from his body. The battlefield fell silent. Standing over the corpse, Dokyo coldly announced that the operation to exterminate the Jaegal clan had been suspended. All available forces were to be gathered immediately. Their new objective was simple. Every member of Shaolin interfering with New Heaven's plans was to be eliminated without fail. As he finished speaking, Dokyo reached up and removed his black hood, finally revealing himself openly before everyone present. With that, the New Heaven members began slaughtering the Jaegal branch clan members positioned atop the hill, throwing their bodies down the slope. Witnessing the massacre, Mujin's frustration surged. He cursed inwardly at the ruthless enemy before him. Suddenly, Dokyo appeared in front of him and swung his sword without warning. Reacting instantly, Mujin raised his arm and blocked the attack. Dokyo let out a chuckle as he finally came face to face with the young warrior who had been causing trouble for New Heaven. He declared that Mujin would pay the price for interfering with their plans. Mujin responded with a scoff and immediately launched a powerful kick. Dokyo raised his sword to block, but the force still sent him flying backward. Furious, Mujin declared that New Heaven would be the ones paying the price. Turning to his companions, he entrusted them with protecting the Jaegal clan members while he dealt with the enemies ahead. Magung agreed and warned him to be careful. Without wasting another moment, Mujin charged directly toward Dokyo. As the battle raged on, Magung unleashed the Rulai Divine Palm Strike, defeating several enemies at once. Seeing an opportunity, Mu Kyung shouted for everyone to drive the enemy back while they still had the advantage. Muyul immediately agreed and rushed forward alongside him. At that moment, a New Heaven member was about to kill a Jaegal clan warrior. Muyul launched himself forward using Monkey Kick, accelerating with incredible speed before delivering a snake strike that sent the enemy flying backward and saved the clan member. Meanwhile, the battle between Mujin and Dokyo intensified. Dokyo swung his Crimson Aura sword repeatedly, launching a barrage of attacks. Mujin defended himself using the Iron Guard technique, blocking every strike. Mujin then counterattacked with Invincible Punch. Sensing the danger, Dokyo immediately activated Phantom Steps and escaped the attack's range. To Mujin's surprise, several New Heaven members suddenly appeared before him and attacked simultaneously. Preparing himself once again, he inwardly complained about the absurd nature of Dokyo's ability. Without hesitation, Mujin launched another powerful attack, defeating several enemies at once. However, more New Heaven members continued to surround him. Among them was Dokyo himself, who utilized Dark Shadow Art to approach from Mujin's blind spot. Sensing danger, Mujin quickly raised his guard. Even so, the impact struck him with tremendous force, sending him crashing into the ground. Grinding his teeth, Mujin planted one hand on the ground, swung his legs upward, and spun his body. His rotating kick struck the approaching enemies and sent them flying backward, defeating several at once. Filled with anger, he cursed Dokyo for his cowardly tactics. Looking around, Mujin realized he was completely surrounded once again. Frustration filled his mind. No matter how many enemies he defeated, their numbers never seemed to decrease. Worse still, Dokyo continued hiding behind his subordinates and attacking from the shadows. There was no clear opening to finish him off. Although Mujin had expected the battle to be difficult, he had never imagined such overwhelming numbers. It became clear that New Heaven intended to slowly wear them down through sheer numerical superiority. If things continued like this, the outcome would not be favorable. While the battle continued, Dokyo calmly observed the battlefield and ordered his subordinate to continue sending reinforcements until every opponent had been eliminated. The subordinate immediately acknowledged the command. Dokyo then questioned why the strike team assigned to attack from the rear had not yet appeared. The subordinate explained that the Jaegao clan members had gathered the surviving branch clan warriors and formed defensive lines. They had realized the strike team's intentions and were currently blocking their advance while protecting Shaolin's rear. After hearing the report, Dokil asked whether Jaegao Ji was leading the resistance. When his subordinate confirmed it, Dokil expressed regret that he had not killed her during their first encounter. In his eyes, the defenders were nothing more than a disorganized group. If their leaders were eliminated, the rest would inevitably collapse. He immediately ordered the nearby assassination squad to prioritize the deaths of Jaegao Gung and Jaegao Ji. As for himself, he intended to focus on a much bigger target. Meanwhile, Mujin unleashed another devastating attack that exploded upon impact. Afterward, he paused briefly to catch his breath and surveyed the battlefield. Despite everything, enemies still stood before him with weapons drawn. Cold sweat ran down his face. His inner energy was steadily being depleted, and he began wondering just how many enemies remained. Then he noticed a brief glimmer of light behind the enemy lines. Suspicion immediately filled his mind. Focusing his gaze, he spotted archers hidden among the trees with bows already drawn. His expression changed instantly. At first, he believed the archers were preparing to target Jaegao Jinhee and Jaegao Gung. Without hesitation, he turned and shouted a warning. At that exact moment, Dokil emerged from the shadows behind him through dark shadow art. A grin appeared on Dokil's face as he announced that he had finally caught his target. Only then did Mujin realize his mistake. The archers had never been aiming for Jinhee or Jaegao Gung. From the very beginning, the true target had been him. The scene shifted to some time earlier at Mount Wudong, where Chung Su had arrived seeking help. His request was immediately met with opposition from Song Baek, a first-class disciple of the Wudong sect. Song Baek could hardly believe what he was hearing. After disappearing without contact for so long, Chung Su had suddenly returned asking Wudong to lend its strength to aid the Jaegao clan. Song Baek reminded him of the current situation. Not long ago, the Unorthodox Alliance had sent a letter accusing Chung Su and his companions of committing evil acts and disrupting the peace of the Central Plains. The letter had demanded their lives as well as an apology from Wudong. The sect had avoided the issue by claiming that Chung Su was undergoing isolation training. If he openly left now, it would only provide the Unorthodox Alliance with a justification to target Wudong. In such circumstances, any reckless action could drag the entire sect into chaos and conflict. Song Baek questioned whether Chung Su was prepared to take responsibility if Wudong disciples shed blood because of his request. Hearing those words, Chung Su fell silent. At that moment, Anhyo arrived. He ordered Song Baek to stop and greeted Chung Su after their long separation. However, his words were far from welcoming. Anhyo remarked that Chung Su must have enjoyed his journey through the world, considering the amount of trouble he had caused. Rather than reflecting on his actions, he had returned only to ask Wudong to fight alongside him. To Anhyo, such behavior seemed shameless. He questioned how much more chaos Chung Su intended to bring to the Murim before he was satisfied and firmly ordered him to return to his quarters. Unexpectedly, Chung Su immediately accepted the criticism. He dropped to his knees and bowed deeply. Acknowledging every word Anhyo had spoken, he admitted that he had indeed caused trouble for the Wudong sect. During his travels, he had witnessed both the beauty and the darkness of the world. At that very moment, Mujin and their companions were fighting against that darkness. They were risking their lives to protect others and save innocent people. Chung Su pleaded for help, promising to accept any punishment and take full responsibility for the consequences. A faint smile appeared on Anhyo's face as he observed him. He noticed something that had changed within Chung Su. Before the Dragon Phoenix Summit, the young man's energy had been divided and unstable due to his lingering past memories. Now, those conflicting energies had merged into one harmonious whole. Such growth should have been impossible under normal circumstances. Curious about the people responsible for that transformation, Anhyo decided that he would see them for himself. Song Baek desperately tried to stop him, warning that traveling to Hubei under the current circumstances would create serious problems. Anhyo ignored the warning. He casually remarked that there was nothing wrong with him paying a visit to the rude individuals who had influenced his grandson. Ordering Chung Su to stand, he declared that they would depart for Hubei province immediately. Filled with gratitude, Chung-Su followed after him. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Dokyo was preparing to strike the distracted Mujin. Just before his attack could land, an aura sword pierced through Dokyo's arm. Moments later, countless aura swords descended from the sky like rain. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, sending new heaven members flying in every direction. The source of the attack soon became clear. Anhyo floated high above the battlefield, surrounded by hundreds of swords created through his phoenix technique. Looking down upon the battlefield, he coldly declared that he had finally found the vermin who had dared send an arrogant letter to the Wudang sect. The sudden appearance of such overwhelming power left everyone stunned. On Jinhee's side of the battlefield, many new heaven members were instantly cut down by the descending swords. Shocked by the spectacle, Jinhee struggled to comprehend what she was witnessing. Dokyo, meanwhile, clutched his wounded arm and desperately attempted to stop the bleeding. He could hardly understand why someone like Anhyo had appeared there. Landing before him, Anhyo questioned whether Dokyo had truly expected there to be no consequences after insulting the Wudang sect. Dokyo responded with anger, accusing him of foolishly siding with Shaolin despite repeated warnings. He warned that the anti-Shaolin alliance would never overlook such actions. Anhyo merely chuckled at the threat, remarking that Dokyo's manners were as foul as his words. Watching the scene unfold, Mujin immediately realized what had happened. If Sage Anhyo had appeared, then Chung-Su must have successfully reached Wudang and requested assistance. His assumption was quickly confirmed when Chung-Su arrived beside him, exhausted from his journey but relieved that they had not arrived too late. Mujin welcomed him and expressed gratitude for bringing such a reliable ally. To his surprise, Chung-Su explained that it had actually been Anhyo himself who insisted on coming. Apparently, the elder had something he wished to say to Mujin personally. That revelation made Mujin nervous. He wondered whether Anhyo might still be angry about what had happened involving Chung-Su. However, Chung-Su admitted that even he did not know the details, though he doubted the elder's intentions were hostile. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Dokyo continued trying to persuade Anhyo. He pointed out that Manhwa, Ame, and Qingqing were not the only sects keeping watch on him. The entire Murim alliance was observing his actions. At any moment, other experts could arrive. Despite that, Anhyo still intended to support Shaolin. Anhyo dismissed the argument completely. To him, the Murim alliance was not so foolish as to be manipulated by anonymous schemers. Unlike Wudang and Shaolin, the people before him were nothing more than thieves who had attacked the Jaegao clan. As a representative of the Central Plains Murim, he declared that they would pay for their crimes. Just as Anhyo prepared to finish Dokyo, a tremendous pressure suddenly swept across the battlefield. Immediately sensing the presence of another powerful expert, he turned toward the source. An elderly man had arrived. The moment Mujin sensed the newcomer's aura, his expression stiffened. The pressure was not that of an ordinary martial artist. It was comparable to the terrifying presence of Tang Gak and Anhyo themselves. Anhyo immediately recognized the newcomer. The man was none other than Namgung Muguk, the supreme clan head of the Namgung clan and the grandfather of Namgung Jinshin. Surprised to see him there, Anhyo questioned why he had left the Namgung residence. Namgung Muguk calmly explained that, as an inspector of the Murim alliance, he had been assigned to investigate the situation surrounding the Jaegao clan. However, his attention soon shifted elsewhere. Turning toward Mujin and his companions, Muguk questioned why they were present. According to the official reports, they were supposed to be undergoing isolation training at Shaolin. Fixing his gaze directly on Mujin, the legendary swordsman demanded to know what the Shaolin Divine Dragon was doing there. Seen from Mujin's perspective, the man before him was none other than Namgung Muguk, the greatest martial artist of the Namgung clan. His strength could be summed up in a single sentence. According to the original storyline, he had never lost a single fight. In the past, he had faced Hyuk Jingang, the former leader of the unorthodox demonic alliance, and all of his subordinates alone. During the Great War of the Heavenly Demon, he had beheaded the Mad Demon in front of 100,000 demonic practitioners. Yet despite such legendary accomplishments, he possessed one glaring flaw: his extreme mood swings. Even the Murim alliance had struggled to deal with his unpredictable temperament. Whenever he became irritated, he showed no mercy, not even toward his own relatives. Those who feared his ferocity had given him the title of the Frenzied Sword Supreme. The problem was why such a person had appeared here. Mujin recalled that Namgung Muguk was supposed to be in secluded training. Unsure of how to respond, he remained silent. Seeing this, Muguk frowned. "You're slow to answer. Am I not asking you a question right now?" Before Mujin could speak, Anhyo stepped forward. He dismissed the intimidation and stated that the investigation into the Jaegao clan was merely an excuse. According to him, Muguk had come because of him. Hearing that, Muguk burst into laughter. He admitted that he had personally traveled all the way there because of Anhyo. After learning that Anhyo's disciple had been heading toward Wudong, certain people had feared his appearance and requested assistance from the Namgung clan. In response, Anhyo unsheathed his sword. He mocked Muguk for appearing simply because some youngsters had called for him, adding that even the supreme clan head of the Namgung clan must have become lonely. Muguk also drew his sword. He claimed that he had no choice. Since they had asked him to take Anhyo's head, refusing had not been an option. After remarking that it had been a long time, he proposed that they continue their conversation through martial arts. With that, the two immediately clashed. The collision of their swords sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Chuckling, Muguk remarked that the situation reminded him of old times when he, Anhyo, and Hyun Guang frequently competed against one another. Anhyo scoffed at the statement. According to him, it had never been friendly competition. He and Hyun Guang had spent most of their time chasing Muguk around to stop him from causing trouble. As they continued exchanging blows, Muguk responded that he had only acted that way because they had interfered with him. He questioned how they had dared to obstruct his battle against the heavenly demon. Another clash pushed both men backward. Grinding his teeth in frustration, Anhyo pointed out that Muguk had done everything solely to fight the heavenly demon. He explained that they had only stopped him because he was interfering with the Murim Alliance's operation. With that, Anhyo charged forward. Utilizing the energy-manipulated sword art and the Taiji Enlightenment sword art, he created numerous swords and sent them hurtling toward Muguk. Muguk remained completely still. He questioned whether Anhyo was referring to the Murim Alliance's operation that had invited the heavenly demon under the pretense of negotiating a treaty before ambushing him all at once. His anger surged. Raising his sword, he unleashed the supreme heavenly barrier. A powerful curtain of enhanced sword energy enveloped him, instantly shattering every sword that struck it. Witnessing the scene, Anhyo was visibly surprised. He realized that Muguk had formed an entire barrier using enhanced sword energy alone. Inwardly, he cursed the old monster, recognizing that he had become even stronger than before. Muguk continued speaking. He declared that because of the Murim Alliance's trap, the heavenly demon had died, leaving countless mysteries unresolved. Questions remained regarding why the demonic cult had invaded the Central Plains and why the heavenly demon, a man renowned for his upright character, had attacked Hyun Guang and left him crippled. His anger intensified. Leaping into the air, he unleashed the third technique of the supreme heavenly sever. The attack descended toward Anhyo. Watching from afar, Mujin could only mutter in disbelief. The power contained within a single swing had altered the terrain itself. At that moment, he realized that this was not merely one of the 10 great martial masters. This was the greatest martial master in the world. As the dust and smoke gradually settled, a shallow cut could be seen on Anhyo's arm. Muguk observed the injury and remarked that Anhyo had rested for too long. The edge of his sword had become dull compared to the past. He urged him to take up his sword properly again, stating that Anhyo was the only person left capable of keeping him company. Anhyo fell silent for a moment. Then he remarked that he finally understood why Muguk had been reminiscing about the past so much. Apparently, he had not heard the news. Muguk narrowed his eyes and asked what news he was referring to. Anhyo revealed that Hyun Guang had recovered completely. Not only had he recovered, but he was so healthy that he was flying all over the place, to the point where even Anhyo found him difficult to handle. Muguk immediately rejected the claim. According to him, Hyun Guang had been no different from a cripple back then. Without another word, Anhyo pointed toward Mujin. He suggested that Muguk ask the young man himself. Muguk immediately turned toward Mujin and approached him. He demanded to know whether Hyun Guang had truly recovered. Mujin calmly confirmed it. He explained that his grandfather had completed his treatment, and was now fully back on his feet. The moment he heard those words, a sinister smile spread across Muguk's face. He declared that if that was true, then he would have to visit Hyun Gwang immediately. At that moment, Dokil suddenly shouted. He demanded to know what Muguk was talking about, and reminded him of the reason he had been summoned there in the first place. Dokil warned that if Muguk left without completing the task he had been assigned, the Namgung clan would suffer the consequences. Muguk slowly turned toward him. Still unaware of the danger, Dokil continued urging him to finish his mission. Before he could finish speaking, his head was severed instantly. After killing him, Muguk calmly declared that the investigation into the Jaegao clan's internal rebellion had officially ended. He then addressed the Jaegao clan head, expressing his hope that the clan would be managed properly from that point onward. Afterward, his gaze shifted to Mujin. He ordered the Shaolin Divine Dragon to accompany him back to the Shaolin Temple and instructed him to prepare for departure immediately. Having said that, Muguk turned around as though the matter had already been decided. Mujin, however, refused. He stated that it was not happening. Muguk immediately stopped and turned back, anger flickering in his eyes. He questioned what Mujin had just said. Mujin calmly repeated himself. He explained that he still had unfinished business within the Jaegao clan. If Muguk truly intended to take him to Shaolin, then he would have to wait until that business had been concluded. Muguk angrily turned toward Mujin and approached him. He told the young man to listen carefully. In the past, he had cut down disciples who interfered with his battle against the heavenly demon, earning the title of the Frenzied Sword Supreme. He instructed Mujin to think carefully about what it meant to tell someone like him to wait, and then answer again. Sweating nervously, Mujin respectfully apologized to Elder Muguk. However, he firmly stated that he could not leave until he had finished what he needed to do. Muguk chuckled and rested his hand on the hilt of his sword. He admitted that he had thought Mujin was a clever young man, but it appeared that he simply did not understand the value of his own life. Just as Muguk was about to draw his sword, Mujin quickly spoke. Instead of refusing outright, he offered Muguk an opponent to fight while he waited and asked what he thought of the proposal. Muguk glanced around before asking whether Mujin intended to have him fight one of his fellow disciples. Mujin shook his head. There was no way any of his friends could serve as a proper opponent. The one who would face Muguk was none other than Taoist Anhio. As Mujin pointed toward him, Anhio immediately became nervous. Muguk nodded. According to him, Anhio was more than worthy of being his opponent. Satisfied, he agreed to wait until Mujin finished his business. Turning toward Jaegao Gung, Muguk stated that he would be imposing on the clan for a short while and requested to be shown to his quarters. Jaegao Gung respectfully agreed. He then instructed Ji He to oversee the treatment of the wounded and the cleanup efforts. The remaining members were ordered to collect the heads of the enemy commander and Jaegao Hyan and follow him. As Muguk and Jaegao Gung headed toward the quarters, Mujin quietly sighed in relief, thinking that everything had worked out somehow. Anhio, meanwhile, remained stunned by the entire exchange. Thus, Namgung Muguk departed from the area, and Mujin spent some time explaining the Jaegao clan's situation to Taoist Anhio. He explained that the conflict between the clan's direct and branch families had not yet been fully resolved. In their current condition, they would be unable to resist another attack from New Heaven. Therefore, they desperately needed time to reorganize and stabilize the clan. After listening to the explanation, Anhio agreed. Although the arrangement had effectively been forced upon him, he acknowledged that Muguk had only appeared because he himself had left Wudong. Furthermore, since he owed Mujin a debt, he had little choice but to cooperate. Curious, Mujin asked why Wudong owed him a debt in the first place. As far as he knew, he had never done anything particularly significant for Wudong. Anhio clarified that the debt was not Wudong's but Chung Su's. According to him, Chung Su possessed the talent necessary to lead Wudong in the future. However, he had always been constrained by his own limitations and trapped by memories of the past. This had long been a concern within Wudong, yet no one had been able to solve it. Now, however, Mujin had accomplished what none of them could. Anhio explained that Wudong's excessive affection for Chung Su had unintentionally become a poison. As a result, he declared that Wudong would not take such a favor lightly. Addressing Mujin directly, he promised that Wudong would fully cooperate with Shaolin's affairs from that day onward. He swore this in his own name. At that moment, Mujin noticed someone approaching and informed Anhyo that the supreme clan head had arrived. A familiar voice immediately sounded from behind them. Muguk asked whether Anhyo was still there. Having finished inspecting his quarters, he proposed that they begin immediately. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed Anhyo by the collar and began dragging him away, declaring that it was time for another conversation through martial arts. As he was hauled away, Anhyo repeatedly muttered that he hated this and absolutely did not want to do it. Watching the scene, Mujin silently thanked Taoist Anhyo. With that, the long and arduous internal rebellion of the Jaegal clan finally came to an end. Afterward, the elders who had cooperated with Jaegal Hyan were arrested, and the internal disorder within the clan gradually began to settle. As for Mujin, he finally began the task that had brought him to the Jaegal clan in the first place. Group exercise. Rows of Jaegal clan members were performing squats when Mujin shouted at them. He criticized their lack of physical strength and questioned why they were already panting after such a short time. He warned that anyone with poor posture would have their training time extended. He went on to explain that external martial arts represented the ultimate method for maximizing physical capabilities. Great physical strength and endurance could not be developed through internal energy cultivation alone. Inwardly, Mujin reflected on his true intentions. Although he had started the program under the pretext of improving the clan members' physical strength and muscle development, with the support of Elder Jaegal Hyan, his actual goal was different. He wanted to repair the fractured relationships between the clan members. By allowing their lingering resentment to be washed away through sweat and shared hardship, he hoped to mend the divisions between them and foster unity through collective training. Naturally, not everyone accepted the training willingly. One day, 2 clan members approached Mu Kyung and handed him a martial arts manual. After examining it, Mu Kyung recognized it as the Moonlight Fan Dance. One of the members explained that they were aware of its severe side effects. However, Mu Kyung had previously mentioned that supplementing the Baihui acupoint with yin energy could eliminate those effects. Of course, they quickly insisted that their interest had nothing to do with the difficulty of the exercises. Mu Kyung calmly explained that the method could indeed prevent the major side effects. However, a minor side effect would still remain. The clan members immediately asked what that side effect was. Mu Kyung answered honestly. Since most of the energy would still flow through the Baihui acupoint, the practitioner would eventually lose their hair. The moment they heard that, the clan members recoiled in horror. Declaring it a demonic art, they swore that the Jaegal clan would never submit to such a technique. As a result, everyone sincerely embraced the muscle-lengthening exercises instead. Gradually, the hearts of the clan members began to unite. Once the atmosphere within the clan had significantly improved, clan head Jaegal Gung made an important announcement. Standing before the assembled clan members, he addressed them solemnly. He reminded everyone that the clan had recently endured a great crisis. However, he emphasized that the disaster had not been caused by any single individual's fault. Because the issue of succession had never been properly resolved, the clan members had failed to trust one another. Their obsession with monitoring and restraining each other had prevented them from hearing the dissatisfaction and conflicts brewing within the clan. As a result, they had declined without realizing it, and become so weak that they could no longer protect themselves. If not for the assistance of Shaolin and Wudong, the Jaegal clan would have been destroyed. Determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past, Jaegal Gung announced a decision for the future of the clan. He formally appointed his daughter, Jaegal Jihe, as the successor of the Jaegal clan. The announcement left Jihe completely stunned. She pointed out that there had never been a female successor in the entire history of the clan. Jaegal Gung responded calmly. History, he said, was something that could be created from this point forward. He praised Jihe for her wisdom in uncovering the schemes of Jaegal Hyan and the forces behind him. He also commended her courage in taking charge and leading the clan when it mattered most. If someone with such proven qualifications was not worthy of becoming successor, then who was? He then formally declared that Jaegal Jihe was the successor of the Jaegal clan and invited anyone who opposed the decision to step forward. Jihe attempted to speak, but one of her subordinates gently stopped her. Moments later, the clan members erupted into unanimous support. They declared that they owed their survival to her leadership, and that no one was more qualified to become the clan's successor. The crowd praised the divine strategist Jaegal, celebrating her wisdom and foresight while wishing for the Jaegal clan to endure forever. Genius protagonists, overwhelming growth, and legendary battles, this is your battlefield. We're just steps away from 20,000 subscribers. Subscribe now and rise with us.